Well, I can tell you, as somebody that has been in Jake Query's two-bedroom apartment before where he lives alone, this studio, even though this is clearly his show, is a lot cleaner, a lot nicer. It smells better, too. So all of those things are very advantageous for me as I sit in and fill in for my good buddy who is still coming back from Long Beach. I think he's actually back here, at least in the Eastern time zone, but Jake usually takes the red eye back. That's a tough trip out to Long Beach, as great as California is. After a long weekend of racing, and then to take the red eye, and then suddenly you land and you're back in your two-bedroom apartment where you live alone with your cat, and you get like a 2-hour nap, and then you come in here and try to ramp up for a radio show. That's not easy to do. So Jake and the folks here at The Fan gave me a buzz, and they were like, hey, he needs to sleep. Can you come in and pinch hit for a little while? I know that you used to be relevant years and years ago. Maybe you're still interested in doing this. And I said, yes, absolutely. Please. I'm still interested in trying to be relevant. So please have me come in and fill in. My name is Derek Schultz, and it's great to be here on a Monday. Wow. Masters weekend, a beautiful spring weekend here in Central Indiana, which always puts me in a great mood. We have spring football. We have the NBA playoffs about to begin with this play-in round that thankfully the Pacers don't have to worry about as they locked up the 4th seed a couple of days ago, and we'll get a rematch with Milwaukee. The WNBA draft is tonight. The NFL draft is just days away, even though that is the most long, drawn-out, tedious thing in sports. You know, by the time we get to the NFL draft, I understand that some of you, if you're like one of those like NFL people, NFL 24/7, like injected into my veins, NFL, I need it. I'm not one of those people. I like to take just a mental break from the NFL, just a straight break where I am not consuming any NFL for like 3 or 4 weeks when the season ends, because I'm just by the end of it, and I love the NFL just like everybody else, and it's right, it's number one, it's King Kong, it's the whole deal. It is by far the biggest thing in American sports and gets the most attention. And I bet if you did like a study on all of the shows here on The Fan, the NFL or the Colts is talked about probably upwards of 80% of the time of all content. And that's the way that it should be, because the numbers reflect that. That's what people care about. That's what they want. I'm just talking about me personally. I need like a 3 to 4 week blackout period on the NFL right after the season ends, because I'm just so exhausted with it. But kudos to the league, because they have found a way to just stay in the headlines over and over again. This owners meeting thing, I never remember the league meetings things being a big deal. The Combine, guys, 20 years ago, the Combine was nothing. No one cared about the Combine 20 years ago. It was like this secret thing that, you know, agents were locked in a closet somewhere, and you'd see Jerry Jones at St. Elmo and all the usual stuff that you'd see, but that was about it with the Combine, and that's exploded into a huge event as well. The NFL draft's always been a big deal. But the rest of the offseason stuff didn't used to be a big deal until we made it a big deal, because the NFL has just kind of gotten everything. So we will, as I complain about the NFL news cycle, we will talk NFL coming up a little bit later on today. In fact, we got a whole lot to get to. Starting with the Pacers and Eddie White. He's going to join us at 3:30, the world's most famous post-game show. Is that what he calls it? I know he has a trademark on it. We'll ask him when he comes on. Eddie is also a big golf guy. And when you know as many movers and shakers as Eddie does, I think just by osmosis you end up being a big golf guy. But he's like played Augusta, and I don't know, he's probably had dinner with Tiger Woods before, because that's just the kind of charmed life that Eddie has lived. And we will tap into that charmed life coming up at 3:30, mainly Pacers, but we'll mix in some golf talk with him. Sorry, 12:30. I've got the afternoon time, on my head here. I'm used to hosting an afternoon show that I got fired from 5 years ago. Coming up at 1 o'clock, Mike Chappell's going to join us. We're going to talk Colts with him, Fox 59, CBS 4, the Dean. I love Chapp. I actually bothered Chapp about something just a couple of days ago. So along with occasionally freelancing here and filling in for Jake or for John's show like once or twice a year, because that's about as frequent as it gets here that they call me, I write sports columns for the Indianapolis Business Journal. And I'm kind of an old radio guy in the sense that I'm not a writer. I didn't go to school for journalism or anything like that. I love to write, but I don't think of myself as like a capital J type journalist. So when I write some things for the IBJ, occasionally I need to lean on somebody who is a capital J type journalist. And Chapp is, you know, old school, professional, knows everything, knows everyone. And so really looking forward to that conversation coming up at 1 o'clock. We'll talk about where the Colts stand about a week heading into the NFL draft. And I want to talk about this quarterback competition too, because I think there is this element of skepticism, for lack of a better term, that the Colts are going to really kind of treat this as a 1v1 and 50-50 and everything's on the table here, and Daniel Jones has the same exact shot that Anthony Richardson has to win this job. And I understand that a lot of you guys don't feel like you can trust what the Colts have to say, and there is reason to not trust what the Colts have to say. The Colts have a lengthy track record in not trusting what they say, whether it be intentionally or unintentionally. And I think they've kind of stepped in it multiple times when it comes to those things. You know, they have very much made it up as they've gone along at quarterback here. They say that there's a plan. Nah, there's not really a plan. They read and react. They make a plan, that plan fails, and then they make a new plan that also fails. That's basically the last 5 years, 6 years of the Colts quarterback situation is make a plan, that plan fails, make a new plan, that plan fails. And you're constantly reacting as everything kind of happens and things fail all around you. But we'll talk to Chap about that coming up at 1 o'clock. And then coming up at 2, I love spring football. College football has the longest offseason to me, where it just feels like it takes forever until we see more college football. And with the playoff and the expanded field this year, I think you saw it go deeper into January, which for me, being kind of a college football dork, was nice. But Purdue held a spring showcase. IU has their spring game, I think, Saturday. Notre Dame had their traditional spring game this past Saturday. So we'll talk to Mike Berardino of the South Bend Trib about where Notre Dame stacks up, trying to create an encore for what was a tremendous 2024 season when they played for a national championship, albeit against a superior Ohio State squad. But still, that's a good place for Notre Dame's program to be, considering where they were not that long ago under, Charlie Weiss and Tyrone Willingham, and even some of those not so great seasons with Brian Kelly. So he's going to join us at 2. And hopefully you guys as well. We have a new phone number here, right? It's not the same phone number as it was? Well, didn't I hear Jake mention that the other day, that there was a new hotline number, or is it still 239-1070 that we're doing?
I'll double check that, but I think it's the same.
It is the same? Okay, cool.
So.
I want to make sure that I did. Maybe that's just me. When I'm in my car, sometimes I'll go grab a lunch from my day job, or I'll go run an errand real quick. And obviously I'll tune it into this show because Jake and I are BFFs and the whole deal. And I thought that he said something about the phone number was different, at least for that show, but that might have been something that was just related to that show. But hope that you guys will join us on this program as well. I thought about leading the Masters because to me, it's the biggest tournament. Some people would say the U.S. Open. I think it kind of depends on how you feel about that. It's probably between, at least here in the States, it's between the Masters and the U.S. Open. Why I love the Masters and why it's number one for me is that it is the first real signifier of spring. Like the Final Four is the last real kind of winter event to me. And then that closes, and then you've got Jim Nance and the green grass and the azaleas and the piano and, the whole deal. Like it brings you into the spring. So that's why I've always had this like deep connection with the Masters. But I am admittedly not a golf guy. I don't golf. When I did golf, I was bad at golf. And I am a majors watcher. And that's pretty much it. I did go to the Waste Management Phoenix Open this year because I happened to be in town visiting family, and my wife and I went, and it was a lot of fun. But normally speaking, I'm not really a golf guy. So I still understand, even if you're a casual fan, I think you understand what Rory McIlroy's win means. And the fact that here's a guy that burst onto the scene very young in the early 2010s, and he was winning everything, and he was a wonderkind and all of that, right? And it was going to be like the next really big thing. And not that Rory hasn't continued winning, but he hasn't won a major. I should say, past tense, won a major since 2014. And, went through a lot of the struggles that endear us to athletes, where you have things in life that kind of get in the way, and you have ups, you have downs, and he reminds you that he's not some golf robot, he's a human being. And he goes through all these things, and we love redemption in sports, and it very much felt like yesterday was redemption in a way, especially the fact that, Rory almost choked it away 2 or 3 different times. He had the disaster on 13 when what was that, a 7? It was a double bogey. He misses a 5-foot putt for the win, and you thought, oh my God, this can't possibly be happening here. But then he comes back in the playoff hole against Justin Rose, ends up winning, collapses to the ground. You could see the emotion. I would say like 90 to 95% of people, there's some diehard Rory haters, but I think most people, an overwhelming majority of them, wanted to see him win, and he won. And we wanted to see him win because of the story arc and kind of bringing that to a close. In the career Grand Slam, he's now one of 6 golfers to ever do it. So, just by winning the Masters and completing that Grand Slam, he puts himself in a rarefied era, even if he doesn't end up with 10 majors, 12 majors, whatever it is. But I'm pretty sure, and I didn't get a chance to listen to him this morning, I'm pretty sure Kevin Bowen probably spent most of the morning show, as long as James and Jeff and everybody allowed it, to talk golf, because he is very much a golf guy, unlike me. And so I don't want to sit here and play pretend I'm the fill-in host. This isn't really my show, and I'm going to come in here and try to fake it. Like, I can tell you all about the Masters and Rory's strategy and what it means for golf. Like, I have real surface-level knowledge of all of that. But watching as a casual fan, if you're listening right now, if you're just a casual golf fan, kind of like me, and you tune in for the majors like me, I think even with that limited amount of knowledge, you could understand what that win meant to golf and to golf bros, golf guys. The people with the tucked-in shirts and the nice pants, and they're drinking a beer at 12:30, and they're watching. That's great. I'm not one of those people, but that's great if you are. And I certainly know those people, and I'm friends with a lot of those people. So this was a Masters that was memorable. I had a buddy of mine that said that, we were texting back and forth about it. He's very much a golf guy. And he said that he felt like this was almost to the level of the Tiger win in 2019. And while I can't speak enough to it to say with authority whether that is true or whether that's embellishment or hyperbole or whatever else, it was meaningful and it was memorable. And it is something that even casual people like me will remember. Oh, yeah, the Rory win in 25. I think people will end up carrying that forward. Something else that happened yesterday, I was at a youth baseball tournament, so I missed this as well. The Pacers and Cavs played a game that didn't matter. And what I mean by didn't matter is that the Cavs were locked in with the 1. The Pacers were locked in with the 4. And that had been the case for a couple of days. I think the Cavs might have clinched the 1 a day or two before the Pacers ended up clinching the 4 in home court. Final game of the year. And the name of the game, when it comes to that, at the end of a grind in an 82-game NBA season is a grind, is to rest guys. You want to rest guys. You want to get everything ready. You know that you're going to get a couple of days in between the play-in round and the whole deal. Like, Pacers don't start this thing until Saturday, so buy a couple extra days of rest as well. And the Pacers did that, and the Cavs did that. And so you had Quentin Jackson playing 40 minutes. You had Johnny Furphy playing 40 minutes. You had guys that aren't going to even see the floor, not even for 2, 3, 4 minutes, that were out there in that game for both the Cavs and the Pacers. And Pacers are down big. They're down 23 points in the fourth quarter. And these guys that don't normally play 40 minutes come roaring all the way back. They force an overtime. They force a second overtime, and they end up winning. And it turns into a 126-118 victory for the Pacers. And why the game that didn't matter mattered in the long run is it was the Pacers' 50th win of the year. And understand that the way that we look at sports right now in 2025, and the way that we've looked at sports for the better part of the 21st century, it's a lot different than how we looked at sports 30 years ago. Like, I always say that Reggie Miller is remembered differently here because he played in the 90s compared to playing now. If Reggie Miller had the same exact career from 2017 to 2035, same exact career as far as team success, points, three-pointers, the whole deal. He had the same exact career. I think what we would talk about, or what people would talk about with him, is what didn't happen. Oh, well, yeah, he was great. He didn't win a championship, though. Instead of what did happen, and appreciate what did happen. I think this culture that we're at as sports fans and sports media, where everything is about rings and win a ring or you suck, is sad. It's depressing. Because it's hard to really enjoy anything or appreciate anything when only one team wins at the end of the day. Only one team and 15 guys get to say that at the end of the day. So the Pacers regular season and 82 games, is it tedious? Is it's all those, it's exhausting. The NBA regular season, and this is, I love the NBA. It's exhausting. But 50 wins is something that the Pacers haven't done since 2014, and it's only the second time it's happened in 20 years. You have to go back to the J.O.-led squad in 03-04, which is still the franchise record, 61 wins. That's the last time that the Pacers had gotten there prior to the last 20 years. Outside of the 14 team with Paul George and George Hill and Roy Hibbert, and they were the one seed in the East and ended up making the conference finals and ultimately lost to the Heat, who I think lost to the Spurs, ended up that year. But 50 wins to me, and if I asked you, hey, what was the Pacers record in 2013? Like, you're going to have no idea, right? I have no idea. What was the Pacers record in 1995? I don't know. 1995, they went to the conference finals. They lost to the Magic in 7 games. I can tell you that. But I don't know what their win total was. So maybe it's an arbitrary number, right? If they won 49 games, is it less of a season because Quentin Jackson and Johnny Furphy couldn't win that comeback yesterday? Like, if they would have lost the Cavs, less of a season? Look, probably not. Right? I'd be lying to you if I said that really mattered. But there's something about that number and about that milestone that I think is worth acknowledging and appreciating, especially in a place like Central Indiana where it's not like you have, this isn't Boston, right? They're not a bunch of teams here that just churn out championships every 5 years or every 3 or 4 years, because that's what it feels like Boston's been on that cycle. So I think 50 wins, considering where the Pacers were back in December. They lose that game to Charlotte. They're 10-15 on the year. They closed, 10-15 on the year. They closed at 40-17. Only 3 teams in the NBA played better basketball over that span than the Pacers did since the second week of December, 40-17. That's a 70% winning clip. How many times in the Pacers franchise history in the NBA have they played basketball at a 70% clip? That's not something that happens very often. And so, look, if they lose in the first round to Milwaukee, am I going to get on here and say, well, the season was still a success, guys, because they won 50 games? No, I'm not going to do that. I understand that the postseason is what people focus on, and that's what I focus on too. But I think I would suggest to you as a fan, let's put it that way, that you need to accept and appreciate these regular season successes as they come. Sometimes seasons are good and they're fun, even when they don't result in something that is tangible, like a Final Four or a championship or a finals appearance or a World Series or a division championship or a Rose Bowl or whatever else. Because there are certain accomplishments and tangible results that you can celebrate that aren't necessarily a championship. Like making the Final Four is a big deal, right? I think we would all agree. Making the Final Four is not winning a championship, but it's a big deal. You remember making the Final Four. But those are the postseason things, even reaching those marks, even getting to the finals, even getting to college football's national championship game. It's extremely difficult to do, even when you lose and you don't get the ring and you don't get the quote-unquote validation of the season. But I look back on some of the most fun seasons here, and a lot of them didn't involve a team actually winning a championship. In fact, I just mentioned a couple of Final Fours. The 2 most recent Final Four runs for Purdue and Indiana both involved them making the title game, and they lost in both games. And both games weren't super duper competitive. I think Indiana took a lead on Maryland early in the second half on an A.J. Moye layup. I remember that because I was in school then. And Purdue, it felt like it was Zach Edey against 5 NBA guys. That's what that title game felt like. It never felt like, from the opening tip, that didn't feel like a game that they were going to win. But it doesn't take away from the great seasons that they ended up having there. Just because they didn't win, to just flush the whole season for that, I think is kind of silly and kind of stupid. Regular seasons are also silly and stupid and drawn out and tedious, as I mentioned, but we have them. So for the last, 5 months, 6 months, you've invested yourself into watching Quinn and Kristen Airy, or maybe you listen in to Mark and Pat and Eddie right here on the radio network. You've invested yourself into that, so you might as well appreciate something that happened from those 6 months, so you don't feel like that's a complete waste of your time. And I think a 50-win season is a good mark to do that. And I think too often and I'm not setting the Pacers up for failure. I think we know that if you gave everybody in Indianapolis true serum and you asked them, can the Pacers win an NBA championship this year? I think most of us would answer, no, probably not. If they got back to the conference finals, I think that'd be amazing. I think even if they win a first-round series against the Bucks, I think you've already reached your baseline. To me, winning a 4-5 series and then losing to a 60-plus win Cavs team, who they actually have had success against this year, but if they lost a series to the Cavs, so what? And to me, I think the season would be, at the very least, certainly not considered a failure. In fact, I think there were a lot of successful things that would have happened this year. But we're kind of playing that out. We're kind of hypothetically going into the future. And I don't even want to necessarily do that because I don't want to just automatically assume what the Pacers are going to do here. I'm just trying to argue that the 50 number might seem arbitrary, but it's something worth acknowledging and appreciating because it's been such a rarity for the Indiana Pacers to do something like that, to get there, where they won 50 games. This was a really good basketball team over the last 4.5 months. It's a really good team. And they had ups and they had downs, and we know what their limitations are. It's a lot of the same supporting cast, right? And a lot of the same frontline players. And we can hash all that out when we talk about, them playing the Bucks and how they look as far as gearing up here for a playoff run. But I think appreciating what they were able to accomplish this regular season and being a really good turning it around. I mean, God, mid-December when they lost to Charlotte, I thought, oh my God, the offense has regressed. The defense still stinks. Obi Toppin, why did they resign him? Oh my God, he can't make anything. What is he even doing out there? And then you look back 4.5 months later and you're like, wow, that was stupid. What were we all thinking? Why don't we, marathon, not a sprint, right? That's the ultimate example of something like that for the Pacers season. So we'll talk about that with Eddie White coming up here in about 10 minutes. But it just, I feel like more of an outlier. I feel like I'm on the island a little bit when it comes to that. I try to enjoy and appreciate regular season accomplishments. Like 100 wins in baseball, the same thing. I think that's, to say that you won 100 games, I think it's a big deal, even though they have the longest, most drawn-out season in sports, of the many long and drawn-out seasons. I try to appreciate those things. Because if you don't, then you're just going to be miserable as a sports fan all the time. Reggie Miller never won an NBA championship, and if you ask most people, hey, give me 2 words to describe Reggie Miller, I think the 2 words in whatever order are clutch and winner. Right? Reggie Miller, the reason why Reggie Miller is in the Hall of Fame is because he was a winner. Yeah, he scored a bunch of points and made a bunch of three-pointers and all of that, but what cemented Reggie Miller's Hall of Fame case was what he did in the postseason. Winning time, right? That's what we have a name for it out here, winning time. And yeah, they lost to the Lakers, and they only went to the finals once, and they got bounced from the conference finals, I don't know how many times, 5, 6 times with Reggie Miller. But clutch and winner, because we used to appreciate those things. And we used to appreciate a second-round win over the Knicks. That was a big deal. I think last year fans did, right? Game 7 at the Garden, did you guys not like? I love that. And that's coming from a former Knicks fan. I thought it was great to go in there. They were cocky the whole series, and it was silent. Then they ran them right out of the building. And it wasn't a championship. They got swept the next round, for God's sake. They didn't make the finals. Pacers didn't hang a banner for anything that they did last year. Last year was a great year. The Colts have had some of those. Now, they've been few and far between lately. But, I remember the 2012 Colts. I thought that was a great season. Came out of nowhere. They were supposed to be terrible. And Andrew Luck and a bunch of nobodies. Samson Sattelli, my God, go back and look at that roster. It was a disaster. And they won 11 games somehow. They weren't really competitive in a first-round wild card game against Baltimore, but still, it was great. It was a great season. Now, it still depends on what they do from here, but if they beat the Bucks, I'll feel the same way. I've had a lot of fun watching the Pacers. This has been a good, fun basketball team for the last 4.5 months. And as long as some good and fun continues, even if the ultimate result is a loss to Cleveland or a loss to Boston or a loss to Oklahoma, I don't care. Honestly, I don't. Entertain me. Play good basketball. Like, that's my bar. It's not win the championship or you suck. And that's where I am with this Pacers team. We'll talk more about it with Eddie White when we come back. It's Query and Company on The Fan. Since Jake is significantly older than me, there's going to be a bunch of like dusty old rejoiners in here because he's old, so he probably is. Is it all old rock, Corbin? Is that like all of the rejoiners for Jake?
Well, today it's because we lost one of the stars of Dazed and Confused.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I did not see this.
Yeah. We lost Cat. His last name was Cat. His first name's slipping my mind right now.
Oh, bummer. Okay. So are we just going to play the Dazed and Confused soundtrack? We could do that, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm cool with that. Now I knocked Jake's music, and now we're going to play the Dazed and Confused soundtrack. He's neither dazed nor confused. He is the host of the world's greatest postgame show, which you can hear right here on these airwaves. He's also a golf guy, so I was like, oh, this is perfect. Let's invite Eddie White onto the show, and we'll talk Pacers. We'll talk a little golf. I actually thought about Eddie calling you and Mark Patrick, and I think I still have Kent's number somewhere, and just having like a former Indy afternoon show host reunion right here on the air on Jake's show.
That's a great idea. I mean, that would be a great podcast. I mean, yeah. What would you call it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Kravitz would nuke it because he would just be like, "What?" It's like, I'm not doing that. You gonna pay me?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And he would show up 5 minutes before we started, and forget about
it. That too. I want to talk Pacers with you, obviously, but as I mentioned, you're a golf guy. So I was hoping I could ask you a golf question before we got in. I had a buddy who said, and he's a golf guy like you, and he was like, this Rory win is almost as big as Tiger's win in 2019. Like, people are going to remember this and the whole deal and the career arc and all of that. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't really follow golf enough to, like, have a real take on that. But would you agree with that take, knowing golf the way that you do? And just seeing the reaction from Rory, and I think the general public, like 90 to 95% of people, it felt like were really behind him, kind of going through all the missteps yesterday in that final round and finally crumpling on the ground in celebration there in that playoff hole.
Oh, yeah, I agree with your friend. I think he's spot on. I think it was one of the most dramatic and important victories in golf, certainly in the last 25, 30 years, maybe longer. I think, again, golf people, who follow golf were aware of this young kid's talent, many, many moons ago when he came out and he had the wild curly hair and he had the Jeremiah hat on, and he came out of nowhere, out of that little town in Ireland, and was like, this guy's the next phenom. And boom, he wins like 3 majors out of the gate. And then he had that he goes to the 10th tee at Augusta, I think it was in 11, and I don't know, a 3-4 stroke lead, and he hits the ball so far left, I think it went to the par 3 course, and obviously failed then. And they're like, okay, well, he'll come back. And, I think in sports, you and I, we've worked in it, so sometimes we become jaded, and then every once in a while something happens, and you're like, that's why I do what I do, because people still believe. And golf people followed this young man and his ups and downs, and mostly downs at Augusta, where he came so close. And, as the years pass, you don't play 4 times a year at Augusta. You play once a year. And, so you get to like 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. Now it's 11 years, and he's like, wait a minute, I'm running out of time here. And, there's other good golfers always there competing. It may not happen. And for it to come out, and then for the ups and the downs yesterday, it might have been the most dramatic, emotional changing final Sunday they've ever had at Augusta. They've had the Jackson 86 was phenomenal. Great comeback. Tigers, where he ran away with it and completed the Tiger Slam. There's many, many great Sundays at Augusta, but this one to be so roller coaster full, where you're like, okay, he's going to do this. And on the first hole, you're like, oh my God, he's going to choke again. And then he's like, no, he got it back. No, he's going to do it. And then it was almost the coronation was beginning, and he hits it in the water, and you're like, wait a minute, he cannot do this. And then even his 18th hole, I mean, he's 4 feet from the dream being realized, and he misses it. And you're like, oh, my God, he's going to lose to Justin Rose. So, I'm taking a long time to answer your question, but your golf buddy was 100% right. It was one of the most dramatic wins in the history of golf. And I will say this. That guy played in our 2 of the BMWs that we had up at Crooked Stick, and he was one of the nicest. We had the 70 top players in golf in both of those years. He's creme de la creme. He was one of the nicest people to the staffers, to the members, to the folks in the gallery. We don't have patrons at Crooked Stick. We have gallery people, and he was awesome. So he's from a great family, and it was great for him to win, and it was a great day for golf.
Yeah, and I think I heard some of the same reviews from folks that I know that were working the BMW as well. And I think at the end of the day, Eddie, even if you don't necessarily have an emotional investment normally in somebody, you want to see great people be great. And like Alexander Ovechkin, a great example. I'm not even a hockey fan, right? And he makes that goal, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty awesome. Like Alexander Ovechkin has gray hair now, and look, he's the all-time goal leader. And obviously with Tiger in 2019, I was never a Tiger guy, but it was hard to not get swept up in that and be emotional to have him kind of tell that final chapter or put that out there with that win at the Masters. So it was great to see, and Rory and go through all the personal stuff and everything like that and to get back on the mountaintop. I thought that was great.
Yep.
We'll see if the Pacers can get on the mountaintop here. I kind of talked about this in the opening segment, but we don't really celebrate regular season success anymore, and I fully understand that. It Cavs Pacers yesterday, right? It was almost like a G League game where you had a bunch of guys playing that don't normally play, certainly don't normally play normal minutes or major minutes. But I thought the Pacers showed a lot of fight and coming all the way back down from 23, and they get to that 50-win mark, and it's something that a Pacers team hasn't done since 2014. They've only done it twice in the last 20 years. I think it's meaningful. Am I wrong to think that it's meaningful for the Pacers to get to the 50-win mark?
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, I think, there was I heard something that was like, it's the 8th time that Rick Carlisle has done that as a coach. I mean, it's immeasurable for sure. And, it evens their road record at 20-20. And of course, they're 1-1 in France. So you're 21-21, which is usually the goal in the NBA. If you can be 500 on the road and then win most of your games at home, well, you're going to make the playoffs and you're going to be pretty good. And like you said, I mean, the 50 wins doesn't happen a lot. So when you can get there, it doesn't matter how you get there. I mean, we had some games during the year that we won that maybe some of those miracle shots, you're like, man, maybe you should have won those. But then we had some games LeBron's tipping that we shouldn't have lost. And, I think the key thing for me is because you have the home court advantage in the first series, we, since January 1, have almost been unbeatable at home. And, you had the LeBron tipping in the game last week. I don't count because, we were playing other guys. The Pacers are really, really good at home. And I think part of that is, and I was telling Todd Taylor, our president of business, this the other day, I asked him, I didn't tell him, I asked him because I didn't know. I said, hey, I've been here like 15 years. I've never seen more people at our games, like consistently. Like a Wednesday night in February, a Thursday night in March. I mean, it's like the place is jammed. It's like a playoff game. He goes, yeah, we sold more tickets. It is insane. So I think the fans have responded. And how you're not from Indiana. I'm not from Indiana. But we both live here now, and we get it. We understand that whole thing about, in 49 states, it is just basketball. But in this state, it's insanity. It's crazy. These people are nuts, but they're knowledgeable. And I think because of the fans and because our team is so built with anybody can get you on any given night, that's why the Pacers are so good at home. That's why it's so important that we got 4 of these, if it goes 7, at Cambridge Fieldhouse.
Yeah, and something that I've always said to defend fans here, in my years here, Eddie, I've been here 20 years. I know you've been here even longer than that. You've been working for the Pacers for 15. The fans always support winners. They always say, I don't remember a winning, fun team here in Indiana. I'm talking college or pro that was not properly supported by fans here. And they're both winning and they're fun. I mean, this was a team that won games at a 70% clip over the last 4.5 months. I mean, this was a really good basketball team since that disastrous opening stretch. And you mentioned Rick Carlisle, and talking about that stretch, is he getting enough credit for what he and the staff were able to do to kind of steer things back on track? Because I'll be honest, that second week of December, they lose that game to Charlotte. I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, like maybe this is a severe regression here after last year. Everything came up like roses with that conference finals run, yet here we are, and this is a better basketball team than it was last year at this point. Your
question is he getting enough credit? That's a great question, and it really is a good question. Usually I don't get that in the 12 to 3 hour here on this show, but it's a great question, and I don't think, and this is not me speaking, this is malarkey, he doesn't give a crap.
No.
He doesn't. He's at his stage. This guy is going into the Hall of Fame. Okay, he is secure, and he is now a better coach now than he's ever been because he is totally secure. Whether he delegates with his assistants who are phenomenal, he doesn't care about the credit. He wants to win games, and I think that has extended in a weird way to today's athlete, meaning the athletes in this locker room. Kevin Pritchard 3 years ago said, "I've never seen a locker room like ours in all my years in sports." And I was talking about that. I'm like, I agree with you. And I've been like in other sports, football and all that stuff. I mean, these guys all genuinely like each other. They all pull for each other. And they all, as a collective, they're really powerful. They don't care about the credit. They couldn't care less if they're on national television or somebody's player of the week or player of the month. They want to win basketball games. They want to go as far as maybe they possibly can. So I am really pumped up about this postseason because I've seen it all year. yes, we play to the level of who we play, and there are teams that, sport that you and I are familiar with, football. There's teams that have won Super Bowls playing like that. The New York Giants used to limp into the playoffs as a wild card team, and next year they win the freaking Super Bowl. So I feel that this team, we went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. No one thought we'd get there. I wouldn't be surprised if they do get to the Eastern Conference Finals again. Again, people are saying, wait a minute, you think they're going to beat Cleveland? Yeah, I think we can beat Cleveland. We are collective. As long as there's no injuries, we stay healthy, I think this team can do as well as it did last year.
And in the first round, it'll be the Bucks again. And I understand that the history with a team like the Knicks goes way back, right? That's part of the fabric of the Pacers, at least in their NBA years, is the Knicks versus Hicks type, all those battles with Pat Riley and Patrick Ewing and Larry Johnson and that whole deal. It does feel like, though, Eddie, that Pacers and Bucks has become a thing. I mean, I'm excited about this matchup because I feel like there's actually genuine dislike between the two teams, and you don't really see that in the modern NBA as much as you did back 30 years ago.
No, but we're becoming something because we got something going with the Pistons.
Yeah.
We got something going with the Bucks. I mean, who would have thought? I think our relationship with the Knicks has never been better. I think they generally like each other. We may be friendly with the Knicks and not so friendly with the Pistons and the Bucks. But here's the concern. I don't want to get ahead of the card because I've been around too long. We have to take care of business on Saturday. We know game one is at 1 o'clock on Saturday at Cambridge. It's imperative to win that game to set the tone because Milwaukee has won 8 in a row. Milwaukee won 3 of the 4 regular season games this year against the Pacers. So Milwaukee can certainly beat Indiana, and they got Antetokounmpo, who is one of the top, 3, 4 players in all of the league, in all of the world. So, I mean, the Pacers got to bring the A game on Saturday and get that first one. This series is probably going to go 7 games, and I think we win it in 7 at home, and because of the home court. And so, I mean, I'm not, this series is, we got to win on Saturday, and you cannot look past Milwaukee. You just cannot.
No, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the one win was the Halliburton crazy 4-point play, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that was the one win. And we've seen regular season and does it translate and the whole deal. We'll see about that. But, Eddie, it's why the focus all year was, can the Pacers be wearing home jerseys in game one? Can they get the home court advantage? And they have it. And now the point of home court advantage, I know it sounds stupid, but then again, this is the 12 to 3 show, so maybe you hear some of this sometimes when the regular host is in here. But the point of home court advantage is to take advantage of the advantage, right? And that's what the Pacers have to do.
Exactly. You heard that word. I hate the word process. You've heard that a lot with organizations. It's the process. But you know what? That's true. I mean, whatever you do, I mean, look, you had to prepare for the show today. There's a process that you had to work through. You had to yesterday think, okay, what's going on in the world? Masters, Pacers, Colts, the quarterback. Who do I get as guests? That's a process. So anything you do in life, you go through the process. Well, the Pacers process after last year was, okay, we got to get home court. Our goal has to be to finish 4th. Well, we may be 6th again, and you get in the playoffs, or maybe 5th. Obviously, you don't want to be the play-in game. But, man, if we can get 4th. And, the last 3 weeks, that got a little dicey. Detroit made a run, Milwaukee made a run, but the Pacers did what they had to do to claim 4th. It's just like Roy McIlroy. The guy for 11 years is trying to give me a chance when I get to the back 9 on Sunday. And he did. And it went up and down, but he followed the process, and he put himself in a position to win the Masters. Now, did it go up and down the back 9? Absolutely. Went all the way to the sudden death playoff. But the Pacers have put themselves in the position they wanted to be in, to be there in the 4th spot. 3rd would have been great, too. But the 3rd would have made you going up against Boston in the 2nd round. I like 4th. That's where they wanted to be. Okay. Now, just like Rory McIlroy, who took care of business on the back 9, now it's time for the Pacers to take care of business in that first series where you have 4 of 7 at home.
We're talking with Eddie White, Pacers Radio Network. I have one last question, Eddie, and this is a guy that the Pacers took in the top 10 not that long ago. But, Jarris Walker was basically out of the rotation in February, but the door cracked back open for him, and it feels like he just straight kicked it in. What do you think about the growth that he's shown here over the last few weeks, and can he play an impactful role here in beating a team like the Bucks and if the Pacers were to get there, competing with a team like Cleveland?
Yeah, I think he can, and not just him. I was telling on one of the post game shows. I think I said to Kristen Air, like, where would we be without Jarris Walker? I mean, just think about that. If Jarris Walker didn't play this year, where would we be without him? And then you sit there and go, wait a minute, where would we be without Obi Toppin? Wait
Yeah.
a minute, where would we be without Thomas Bryant, who we had
Sure.
to get because those two big guys went down early? It's like Kevin Pritchard, those people, they have put the puzzle pieces in there, and all of these guys. And remember, we started our conversation talking about the collective, everybody together as one unit. That's what makes us so freaking valuable, or so good. Makes those guys valuable is that they can each contribute at different times when they're called on. So Jarris Walker, when he's been asked to play heavy minutes off the bench, or when he's been put in a starting position, he's delivered. Thomas Bryant has delivered like he's been in this locker room for 3 years, let alone join them early in this season. Obi Toppin. And then we haven't gotten into Neesmith and Nemhard and, T.J. McConnell. The list goes. And I haven't even mentioned Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton. So, it's like a band of brothers. This is a band of really good brothers, and they're all united. They all care about each other. They play together. Man, I cannot wait for Saturday. There's nothing like postseason basketball in the NBA. Nothing.
And there's something about, I know people complain about it because they're the first game and it's not in prime time, but there's something about weekend afternoon NBA playoff basketball. It brings you back to Rick Smits, Reggie, NBA on NBC, doesn't it? I mean, there's just something special about in daylight walking downtown and going into a Pacers playoff game to me.
Absolutely. The older fans listening to us remember standing there on the outside of Market Square Arena, and you had the little deli across the street, and some people tailgated, and you were outside on a Saturday in the sun getting ready to go in and watch the Knickerbockers and the Pacers. It was flat out magical. And then when we got to it was Racers and Pacers. It made our city even greater. And I'm so thrilled that we're at 1 o'clock because it is. It says it's warm outside, it's sunny outside, it's playoff basketball. Man, it's going to be great. And now it's just up to the team to take care of business and get that game one on Saturday at 1 p.m. at Gamebridge.
You can hear Eddie White on the Pacers Radio Network, post-game shows throughout the playoffs. Follow his tweets at Eddie White3, or you can check out his Instagram, and that's usually just pictures of Eddie with famous people that he really, in real life, knows. So I appreciate it, my man. Thanks so much for coming on, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
You got it, my friend. God bless you.
That's our pal, Eddie White. And Eddie's great for the energy and the optimism, but I think there is a lot of reason to be energetic and optimistic about this Pacers team. We'll talk more about them when we come back as far as the blue and gold and this first-round series against Milwaukee. Also, an update that I saw on Damian Lillard's health, which we'll talk about when we come back. It's Derek Schultz filling in for Jake Query & Company, right here on The Fan. Don't go anywhere.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm trying to remember what scene this is even from.
Freshman initiation.
Okay, yeah, all right. So they're like squirting ketchup and mustard on them in the trucks and stuff. I think I remember that one. Okay. Yeah, that does come back to me. We're playing Dazed and Confused for the rest of the day, apparently, here on the show, which is good. It's always good to have a theme. The rejoiner music, when I agree to fill in to do this, and I do this like once or twice a year, really, it's always important to me to like get a theme for the rejoiner music. So thankful for Corbin and the rest of the crew here for coming up with that to help us out today. I'm Derek Schultz filling in for Jake Query. He caught the red eye back from Long Beach. He is very sleepy. He will be back tomorrow. No, I say that jokingly, but honestly, it's a tough trip. And when you're out in the sun and racing all weekend and quals and everything else, it is a long, long weekend for that very talented IndyCar radio crew. And so Jacob's resting up, and he'll be back as normal, as will this show, starting tomorrow. Thanks to Eddie White for joining us in the last segment. I love our visits with Eddie. I love the energy that he brings. Pacers and Bucks will start their series on Saturday. They are the very first game of the real NBA playoffs. Now, we have this play-in round, which actually I think we've – I don't want to say embraced. I don't think people embrace is the weird word, because that means that like people are really into the play-in round. If you aren't a fan of one of the teams in the play-in round, then you probably don't care. But I think we've accepted the play-in round. Like, it's fine. Actually, kind of like it, I think. Whereas when they first came up with the idea, I was like, oh, God, like, do we really need the 10th team in the standings to be there to fight for a playoff? Like, who cares? And I'm at least mildly intrigued by the play-in round. But the core playoffs, of course, with the traditional format that we're used to, start on Saturday. As Eddie mentioned, the Bucks took 3 of 4, and the one win for the Pacers was that wild win a month ago where it was a back and forth over the final 2 minutes or so, and then it looked like the Pacers were dead in the water, and Halliburton from the corner makes this kind of circus shot 3 plus the foul. Pacers win $115, $114, and it was one of the best regular season moments and wins. Really, that was, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was a TNT game. That was a national, or maybe it was an ESPN game. It was a national TV game. But overall, that was a great win and a memorable win for the Pacers to come through with that. But I just don't know how much you really read into the results. I'm not just saying that because the Bucks won 3 of 4. Pacers twice were in a Sega Baba situation, which for those that don't know, even though it's a very popular term and it's sweeping the nation, Sega Baba, a second game of a back-to-back. So the Sega Baba was actually that game that Halliburton won, and then a Sega Baba in the fourth and final game that the Bucks won in Milwaukee, and that was later that week, March 15th, or later the next week, early the next week, 126, 119. So I don't really know how much to read into that. And then Damian Lillard-wise, I'd mentioned, I teased that. Optimistic about a return sometime during the playoffs. I don't think there's anybody that thinks that he's going to return during the first-round series. So that is kind of remaining the same. It doesn't look like he's going to be back for the Pacers, but it does look like if the Bucks were to win the first-round series, he might be back some point later this postseason. Top of the hour, we will shift over to football. The Dean, Mike Chappell, joins us. It's Query & Company. Hour number 2 coming your way next, right here on The Fan. This is a great song. I don't know if I should admit this because it is an awful habit, and if you're doing it, you should try to stop. I'm not telling you anything that you didn't already know. Luckily, I was able to stop, and I'm glad that I just don't see people doing this as often. I was a smoker for a while, and that song from Aerosmith, Sweet Emotion, just kind of reminds me of like the first nice day of the year. You roll down the windows. For me, it was a 1989 Honda Accord with the flip-up lights. That's what I drove in high school. And get out of your part-time job bussing tables and light up a cigarette and crank that up on your tape deck. Like that's what that song reminds me of. Besides Dazed and Confused, of course. So first nice day of the year, that's like the one time that I still like crave. Like I really just want a cigarette. Like first nice day of the year, roll the windows down to the car. I know it's a horrible habit. It's gross. It smells bad. It makes you smell bad. It's bad for your health and your lungs and the people around you. Like I'm not condoning it or anything like that, but it's just, part of me does actually miss that. I do genuinely miss Mike Chappell as well. I don't know why. I mean, I miss seeing him around at the Colts complex, I guess, but that's on me. He's still there every day. It's just I'm the one that's the has-been here that fills in like once or twice a year on the radio airways. And he joins us now on Query & Company. He covers the Colts, of course, for Fox 59 and CBS 4. And it's funny, Chap, because I literally just called you. For people that don't know, I called Mike the other day about something Colts-related. And here I am using you as my phone-a-friend again to be on a guest on the show today. So thanks so much for letting me bother you 2 times in 1 week.
Well, two things. First, when I hear the song that you led in with, what I think of is Jennifer Aniston dancing in We're the Millers.
Oh wow!
So
okay. Yeah.
So, but then when
that's a good mental picture too. Yeah, more than me having a cigarette.
Yeah. And then when you called about the open competition and all this stuff, I really started thinking, when's the last time? I mean, that's what we were talking about, that they had legitimate open competition. And I don't think Richardson's rookie year was legit. So I go back to like pre-Jeff George with like Jack Trudeau and Chris Chandler and even Gary Hogeboom. So this is not normal. The open competition at quarterback. One thing that Chris Ballard stressed in January is how he made the mistake last year of re-upping too many players with the idea that it would be motivation for better things. And it didn't. There was a level of complacency instead of competitiveness. And I think roster-wide competitiveness is a great thing. It's necessary. Open competition is not a good thing at quarterback. It's not. I don't care how you spin it. If you've got open competition at quarterback, you have issues.
Yeah, and I think it shows in a way how stable the position was for so many years, where you had Peyton Manning and the consecutive starts record and all of that, and then into Andrew Luck, who was fine until he was not fine. You know what I mean?
Right.
And even
you're talking about 17, 18 years.
Yeah, and it's just kind of one of those things that it just seemingly turned to ash for him. But, the first couple of years, it was no doubt who the starter was going to be, and that was what our conversation was about. And
right.
And I think, Chap, some of that is tied into the fact that, and I felt this way, I no longer feel this way, but I think most people felt like Steichen, Ballard, Richardson were sort of tied together, right? Where, okay, well, if Richardson fails, then that means you must move on from Chris Ballard.
Right.
But now I'm starting to think with how the Colts are approaching this season and kind of what they've said and what they've not said, we talked about this. You mentioned this hypothetical situation. What if Daniel Jones wins this job, it's his job all season, and the Colts scratch out a 10-7 record and make Wild Card Weekend? Richardson's gone, right? But are you sure that Ballard is? Because I'm not so sure that Ballard gets fired for making the playoffs.
Yeah, it's not an ideal situation at all. And we've talked in the media room that's sort of the worst case scenario. Sort of. I don't know if there's much difference in making the playoffs at 10-7 or almost making it, or going 6-11, because you're still zero. You're at ground zero on the reset button. So yeah, it's really interesting. and boy, the spin you would put on us, really, look what we did. Yeah, we had to go to our free agent, but boy, we made the playoffs, or we went into the last week of the season like they did 2 years ago, and we came within X number of plays. But then what's your future? What is your? I see zero ways that Richardson survives that, and then you've got Daniel Jones. Let's just say that he has a Minshew type season, which we saw the absolute best of Gardner Minshew.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone would disagree with that at all. And it wasn't good enough, but it was almost good enough. But then where are you? If you have that kind of a season, you're going to be drafting, 17, 18, 19. And let's say it's a good quarterback year. It's always a good quarterback year in the draft if you're taking top 5, top 3. Otherwise, it's not. So, yeah, it's a really difficult situation they're in. And as I've said openly, the only way this works for everybody is for Richardson to come in and just grab the position. And you think, yeah, there's no question. They're going to name him after 2 games, 3 games preseason, and everyone will agree. Anything short of that, we went through all this process, and they're not going to give us a breakdown that was 65, percent Richardson and Jones was 35%. They're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be so hard that if in our eyes it's close because, and to me it'll be close because neither one really played that well or consistently. And then you're going to name your starter for now. He's our starter for now. And after 2 bad games or, whatever, then you're looking over your shoulder, or the team is being asked every week about that. So the only way to me this thing really works long term is for Richardson to make that improvement that everyone hoped for after his rookie year, which was totally impeded by the shoulder surgery. But boy, now there really can't be any excuses, reasons, not even reasons. Well, he's had the entire off season to do what he can do, and he just has to come in. And we're hoping to talk to him next week when their off season program opens, and that won't tell us really much. He'll tell us what he's been doing, and I feel better and whatever. But until we see him practice in a month or so, and OTAs and then training camp, that's when we'll know. And boy, he needs to really. If he can't beat out Daniel Jones,
oh yeah, that tells you all you need to know. That tells you all you need to know, right?
Then you know. You're right.
Yeah.
Then you know.
And you can't wait around. And what's kind of bothered me, as much as I've appreciated the fact that Baker Mayfield has come back, right, and Sam Darnold has come. Geno Smith. Some of these guys that were left at the quarterback graveyard have come back from us leaving them from the dead. Like this thought that, well, you just have to be patient. That's just not how the NFL works, right, Chap?
No.
I mean, the Jets couldn't wait around for this, and multiple teams gave up on Baker. You can't just sit around.
Right.
If you gave Anthony Richardson 5 years to show it for you and he still stinks after 5 years, then you're really screwed.
Well, because again, what people forget or don't think about is while you're doing this, trying to figure it out, Jonathan Taylor's getting older. Quentin Nelson's getting older.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Kelly's gone. Michael Pittman, if maybe he's not here because of the contract's up. So all your young talent is getting older. I keep thinking of all the talent that Jacksonville wasted, the Maurice Jones-Drews and people like that. And, when the quarterback doesn't work, you have a running back rushes for 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns, has the greatest season by running back for a franchise that has running backs in the Hall of Fame, and you don't make the playoffs. That's the ultimate downside of not figuring out the quarterback thing. You can overcome missing on a pass rusher or a center or a corner. You miss on a quarterback, and it just sets you back 3-4 years. And let's say that they walk away from Richardson next year. Then you're looking at 2 or 3 more years at best, and most optimistic, to get it fixed. So it just impedes everybody's progress. And it's not a good, as we've seen, it's not a good place to be when you're going from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers and all. That's no way to play.
No, it's exactly what, back in the early part of the century, certainly in the Peyton Manning era, then even in the first couple of luck years, you looked across the room at the Bills or the Dolphins or somebody, you're like, whoa, glad the Colts aren't that guy. And now here we are, right? The Colts are that guy where they're churning out these middling seasons with some middling quarterback play or even worse than that. Moving on from the quarterback, there's the tight end situation to figure out. We're about a week away from the draft here. Mo Alley Cox is back for his, whatever it is now, 27th season, I think. But
I know.
The expectation, obviously, is not that Mo Alley Cox would be the number one. He's a good blocking tight end. He's a good veteran presence to have in the locker room. There was a lot of reason to bring Mo Alley Cox back. But have they put themselves, Chap, in a position where the first pick, even if it's a trade down type situation, because this is a very deep tight end class, it almost has to be a tight end? Or am I not giving Chris Ballard enough credit there for being kind of open-minded to how the board falls?
Well, you and I'd be on the same island if that's. I mean, I think with you again, and I see mock drafts. I'm sitting here doing an updated one for our website at CBS4 and Fox 59 a little bit later, but they're all tight ends. Now there's a few. A corner or an offensive lineman, a pass rusher. And I understand that. Corner I don't understand because, again, you build your roster certain ways, and they've taken care of corner. They've taken care of safety.
Mm-hmm.
Where early on you were thinking maybe a safety. No, they've done that. And when you've got such a desperate need at tight end, and I hoped, and I mentioned on social media, this Mo Alley Cox thing back, it can't possibly change what they've done. People say, well, blow the room up. Well, you can't get rid of everybody and then start over. You can't do that. And if Mo Alley Cox is like your third tight end, fine. He's your blocker. He's going to give you some a few catches that make a difference. But you just need a guy. And they've tried with, Ogletree and Jelani Woods and even Kylan Granson draft-wise, but not to the Dallas Clark level of round one. And, if they don't take a tight end in the first round, they take an offensive lineman because if there's a quality tackle, I understand that. So some of these mock drafts have them taking a guard because they'd have one of the best guard tandems in the league. And I'm thinking, are you crazy? Who cares? Okay, good for them. But it just seems like everything points to that. But if they don't take one in round one, then I need to know what the plan is. And maybe they've got a guy in round two they really like. And if that's the case, you hope that Warren or Loveland aren't, the second coming of Brock Bowers of what he did last year. It's just one of these, like when I remember back in, 2016 with Ryan Kelly, where the Colts needed a center and he was there. And it was an easy projection with Ryan Kelly. This is such an easy projection because, like you said, it's need and demand. It's need and supply. It's a good tight end draft. If they like Warren, then move up however high you think you need to get him. Don't be sitting there hoping he gets there because there's a good chance he won't be. If you don't have much of a separation between Warren and Colston, then you sit at 14 and take Colston. But I would be disappointed if they thought, well, we can get the fourth best tight end in round two while also getting something at 14 that's more value. I would hate to see that because this is such an important year for Steichen, for Ballard, but more so for Richardson. And don't hamstring him even more by not giving him as much talent. And I'm not saying a guard or a tackle wouldn't be that, but you've got a projected 5 that's not that bad. But boy, at tight end, there's such a need, and give the quarterback every opportunity to succeed because so much rides on, as we've talked about, Richardson being the guy. So don't sell him short. Give him a chance to succeed. And then if he doesn't, you say, well, we did this, we finally did this, and it just didn't work out. But don't be sitting here in November, December and say, man, I wish we had a better tight end. Well, really? So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, they treated, for whatever it's worth, they treated free agency like it was win now, and I think the win now
Yes.
move for this would be not to take a best player available and somebody, like a raw pass rusher or something like that, even though you could
Right.
always draft a raw pass rusher with that pick, but take somebody that can help you immediately because, Chap, honestly, glass half full, I think the offense is actually in a pretty good spot. The wide receiver room is a much different conversation than it was 2 years ago, right? We saw that really improve.
Right.
And it's the missing link. I think just when you're talking about obviously the pass catchers, but even the running back room now with a veteran backup and Jonathan Taylor, I feel good about every other spot offensive, even offensive line, than I do that tight end room, which might have been the worst position group in the entire NFL last year.
And statistically, it was. It was. It took me a while to do it, but that was the worst statistical year by the Colts since like 1994.
Wow.
Which is, that when you go back into the 90s,
A different era, yeah.
it just tells you, and I just think it so hamstrung Shane Steichen on what he could do offensively. It's not the same as if you don't have a left tackle, you can't play offense. It's not that level, but without having a tight end that you can rely on, Jack Doyle, Chris Ballard mentioned at the owners' meetings that they've looked for that difference maker since Jack Doyle's been gone, and Jack was it's hard. It's really hard to define Jack Doyle's career. He wasn't a great player, but he was a great Colt for what they asked him to do and what he did. And I'm not seeing him as a Ring of Honor guy, but boy, whenever you needed something, well, Jack, let's go to Jack, and he always came through. Receptions, blocking. And they've missed that. Again, it's such a no-brainer. This is one where don't overthink it. And like you mentioned, the way they approach free agency is like, now we need this now. These are big needs. They paid out the nose for it, which they have. Those are the two biggest free agent contracts Ballard's ever given out, which tells you how important he thought it was. So get a tight end. Mo being back, it just okay. He helps the room. He's a great guy in the locker room, which I've always thought we should have like a say in like 3 spots on the roster where we get great quotes in the locker room just to help us. And Mo's great, and he's durable. He doesn't miss games. But, boy, you need a difference maker, and the draft appears to give you a couple of options to do that. So don't overthink it.
We're joined by Mike Chappell talking Colts here on Query and Company. Derek Schultz filling in for my good buddy Jake. Kicker-wise, Matt Gay cut a couple of days ago, and Spencer Schrader is on the roster, but I would assume, Chap, they're going to bring in somebody else in camp. Maybe not as an open battle if they really like Spencer Schrader, but are they going to bring in another kicker like a UDFA or something like that?
I would think so. This isn't like with Vinny where or even Matt Gay the last couple of years. I would think whoever you bring in, if he has a good off season, then he's got a chance. Because again,
yeah,
Spencer Schrader, what is he? He's like 5 for 5 against with the Jets and KC, and he kicked a couple PATs here. But he's not kicked a 50-yarder in the regular season. He kicked a 56-yarder for the Colts in the preseason, so he's got the leg strength. But Matt Gay just kind of shows you that there's going to be accountability, and it's such a strange dynamic when last year he was like 28 for 28 from 49 in, and he was 3 for 9 on 50-plus yarders, and he's 50% for 50 yarders since he got here, and they just decided that's not enough, and it's a liability to the offense when. Do I kick a 53-yarder, or do I punt, or do I go for 4th and 5? So again, that took me by surprise a little bit, but it just shows you that they're not standing pat. That they're looking for competition or an upgrade. In this case, an upgrade. But I won't. I'll pay attention to whichever kicker they sign. Because to think that this is Spencer Schrader's job it's his for now. He's our kicker for now, type of thing. Like I said, with a quarterback. But it just shows you that if you're not playing up to what they need you to do, they will move on.
Yeah, the only thing that I can remember, and I understand that he played last year. In fact, he kicked I think, in games for 3 different teams, Colts, Jets, and Chiefs. But
Right.
Schrader at Notre Dame, that one year that he was there, wasn't very accurate, but he could bomb the ball. And I
Right.
think that's what they were missing with Matt Gay.
So he kicked the long way, but it was, it was.
Well, yeah. Well, but even Matt Gay, in his defense, Matt Gay, every 42-yarder, that was going in for the most part for Matt Gay, right?
Yeah, we were joking in the last game of the season. I thought it was is they were lining up for like a 50 or 51-yarder, and I joked to KB Kevin Bowen that let's move it to 49 and give him a shorter, lead up to the kick, but at least it's a 49-yard field goal instead of a 51. But you've just got, and the way guys are kicking field goals nowadays, 50-yarders are not gimmies, but they're not 50-50 either. These guys are kicking like 70, 75%. And that's what he was with the Rams. Remember, he came here, he only missed like 6 kicks for the Rams in 2 or 3 years. And it just, I don't know whether it got to be in his head to where, oh my God, this is a 50-some yarder. And sort of in his defense, I guess, he had 2 or 3, maybe 4 of those 50-yarders went off the uprights. So, it's not like he was Mike Vanderjacking the ball into the way right side, but it's a bottom line business. And when you're a kicker, I had lunch with Adam Vinatieri a couple weeks ago, and there is the fact that he played 24 years for 2 teams at a position to where they'll get rid of a kicker at the first sign.
Oh yeah.
Of being inaccurate, unless you're the established guy. So we'll see where it goes. But no, you're right. That's one that we need to keep an eye on and see. James Boyd, when they signed Schrader, he kind of did a story like, "Hey, is this a sign about something or other?" And I thought, no. And he was spot on that this, at least in his opinion, this was a sign that they weren't totally happy with Matt Gay. The fact is, the 2-year contract doesn't mean much to me because with most of these, they're week to week. They're not year to year. They're week to week. They can cut you and be out nothing or very little. But that's another position we need to pay attention to during the off season.
Yeah, and I remember that game you were talking about, Chap, and I don't remember if it was like Buffalo during the middle of the season or something where like Shane Steichen played for the field goal in that spot. Like it was like a 3rd and 8 or something. And they ran like a draw, a play that had no chance and gained, I don't know, 1.5 yards or 2 yards to set up like a 53-yard field goal. And of course, Gay ended up missing it. And I thought, even in lifetime, it wasn't even like a hindsight is 2020 thing. I was like, what are they doing?
When the coach can't trust on a 53-yarder, which again it's not 63, so it does mess. It's kind of like tight end. It just messes up how you call games.
No question about it. Last thing before we cut you loose here, talking about the draft as well, and I don't think this is for a Richardson replacement, but strictly for depth. Are you also expecting them to draft a quarterback next week?
Yeah, It's funny how I was thinking about Quinn Ewers all along, just because Texas and Sam Ehlinger and all this, and probably I think they will at some point. Although I could argue why. Just sign a free agent guy. You've got the 2 veteran guys. You've got Jason Bean, and then bring in another arm. I don't. Although that's not the way that Chris Ballard and his staff can build a roster. It's not like, well, if it doesn't work with these vets we have, then who the hell cares what 5th or 6th round quarterback we have? But they won't draft that way. They'll draft if there's a guy they like. They'll take one, and you're developing, not to be, again, like you said, not to be, hey, in 3 years, maybe this guy can be a starter. No, you'll be looking for a young guy who can maybe be that backup guy, probably better than what Sam Ehlinger was, or they didn't give him a lot of help either all the way through the years. So I think they take a running back, and I think they take a quarterback at some point on the 3rd day.
It's Mike Chappell. You can check him out on Twitter at mchappell51. Also, the Blue Zone podcasts with my buddy Dave G and Matt and the whole group over there. It's a lot of fun. I love listening to the pod as well. And, Chap, hope to run into you in person. And I promise, after this radio appearance and then last week me bugging you about that IBJ column, I will have a no-contact period with you for at least, 2 more weeks before I bother you again.
You know where to find me. When I'm at the Colts complex, So you know where to find me.
All I got to do is show up. I know. It's just about dragging myself out of bed and getting over there.
I hear you.
Thanks so much, my man. Appreciate it as always.
Appreciate it. Be well.
That's our friend Mike Chappell. And interesting words there. And I think we are on the same page when it comes to a lot of these things about the Colts and the quarterback battle. And in fact, that's what I want to talk about next. There is a lot of skepticism about whether this Colts quarterback battle is going to be legit or if it's just whatever. They're trying to light a fire under Richardson. He's going to be the guy no matter what. I'm not so sure about that. For once, I'm actually taking and buying what the Colts are selling me, and I'll tell you why when we come back. It's Query & Company. Derek Schultz filling in for my good pal Jake here on The Fan. Man, we need to get like Slow Ride and Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, and we need to get that going. Like Love Hurts is too slow. Corbin, we need to pick people up in the afternoon. Like a lot of people, I'm a 1-cup coffee drinker, so I drink one in the morning and that's it. And I generally speaking, maybe once a week I'll dip into like the afternoon coffee, and I'll usually have it like around this time because around 1:30 I'm like, I'm kind of dragging or whatever else. Like, I don't want to play Love Hurts and drag people down. I want to be peppy, energetic. We don't need like Eddie White energy, who joined us about an hour ago, but something close to that. Then Love Hurts is just too sleepy. Speaking of sleepy, that's what Jake Query is doing. He took the red eye back from Long Beach. He'll be back tomorrow. I'm Derek Schultz filling in. Thanks so much for joining me here on The Fan. We've had a lot to get to today with the Pacers, and we just talked some Colts with Mike Chappell. I wanted to get back into the quarterback situation here, but first let's go to the phone lines where we have Tim to join us to talk about, I believe, the kicking situation. Hello, Tim.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for calling.
Hey, no, real quick, the kicking thing, and I know that it's kickers, but I was flipping yesterday through the UFL, and I seen Rico Blankenship kicking for the St. Louis team, and they showed a thing. He was 7 for 7, and his longest was a 56-yarder he's made so far.
Yeah, he's done pretty well for himself. And I don't think – I'm trying to think. He went to the Cardinals, I think, and then he might have gone to another NFL team, but I'm not sure that I have to look it up. I don't think Blankenship has kicked in the NFL since he was with Arizona. But yeah, I did see that he had resurfaced. I think the problem there is, Tim, and look, 7 for 7 is great, and I'm glad that he hit a 56-yarder because that was his big problem. When he was here, and I loved Rodrigo Blankenship. He had glasses and Legos, and he was kind of a dork like me. Like, I really connected on an emotional level with Rodrigo Blankenship, but he couldn't kick from 45 yards. Like, forget 50. Like, Matt Gay just got cut because he couldn't make 53-yard field goals. Rodrigo Blankenship couldn't even come with close on a 45-yarder. I mean, that was a big problem for him.
Yeah. All righty. Thanks about that.
Yeah, but it's a good point that I'm glad that he has resurfaced and maybe he'll get another NFL chance. Kicker is not that dissimilar to quarterback where, guys just keep getting a chance over and over again, even if they're deep reserves that aren't supposed to see the field anymore. Who's that dude that the Colts saw? The Colts played the Dolphins. The guy from UConn. There's a quarterback from UConn who was not a good college quarterback either, but he keeps getting signed to be backup quarterbacks, to be a backup quarterback with multiple teams, and I'm totally spacing on his name. Let me look it up. Is it Tim something? Tim Boyle. Bang. Okay, sorry. This is why it's hard to come up with examples on the fly when you're on the air. Tim Boyle is one of those guys where you look at the stat sheet and you're like, oh my God, somebody thinks this guy's an NFL quarterback, and he's played for the Packers and the Lions and the Bears and the Jets and the Texans and the Dolphins and the Giants and the Titans. I mean, this dude has been everywhere. And I feel bad to knock on a fellow Connecticut native, the second greatest state in the union to the great state of Indiana. But, yeah, Tim Boyle, my God. And kickers like that too, where you just kind of hang around and you're laying on the futon in the middle of October and you hope that somebody gets you a call because their kicker hurt his hammy or whatever. And then you can get pressed into action that way. I mean, that's what you got to do. You just have to be sort of on standby. And I'm assuming Blankenship is probably the same way. Let's talk about the quarterback situation because the kicker battle, I'm maybe there will be a kicker battle, but I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time on a kicker battle here on an afternoon sports talk radio show. There's a lot of skepticism, and I mentioned this off the jump of the show as well. There is a lot of Colts fan skepticism. Look, there is Colts fan skepticism in general, right? But particularly when it comes to the quarterback situation. And I don't think I need to rehash the whole history here. Full disclosure, I'm actually writing about this in a column for the IBJ that's coming up, that's going to be published on Friday. So this has been top of mind for me. And I knew that I wanted to bring this up on the show, and Mike Chappell kind of hammered home why I wanted to bring it up again and kind of dive further into it. The Colts don't have the best history, and I don't necessarily think that this is a nefarious thing, and I don't think that they have always been intentionally misleading. They don't have the best history here recently of saying something about the quarterback situation and then having that come to fruition. And what I mean by that is that when you go back to the late Andrew Luck years, which feel like 100 years ago now, but the late Andrew Luck years and about his availability and about his injuries, they weren't always super forthcoming about that. Now, the Colts aren't exclusive like that, okay, to defend them. A lot of NFL teams aren't super forthcoming sometimes when it comes to when it comes to big injuries for key players. So I kind of understand that. But then you have, obviously, the retirement that's heard around the world in 2019 on the doorstep of that season. And then throughout this kind of quarterback process here, it just has felt like they have made it up as they've gone along. I'll give them a break for Brissett because that was a situation they were thrust into where it was like Jacoby Brissett had to be the starter that year. He was the only other person in camp who had taken any reps at all. You were 3 weeks away from the season opener. You had no choice. You weren't going to bring in somebody fresh off the street to be your quarterback. It was going to be Brissett. And then once he played that season, and it was pretty clear to most people, there were some people that were kind of hanging on to the fact that Jacoby Brissett was a winner and a great quarterback, and he was really neither of those things. And so they dump a bunch of money in Phillip Rivers' lap, which was a defensible decision. Because you were hoping, I think, at the time to buy 2 years. You end up buying 1 year out of Phillip Rivers. And it was a good year. I think the 2020 season has aged tremendously well with as bad as everything has been since then. But Rivers ultimately retires. Now, whether the Colts said, hey, we're moving on, I don't know. I don't know what ended up happening with that. Did Rivers want to play a second? I don't know. Who knows? It's over. It's done. He's gone. That's it. And then you make the trade for Wentz, and then it's Ryan, and then what we've had here over the last couple of years. So it's not that the last couple of years have been about unintentionally lying about the quarterback situation. It's just been these plans that the Colts keep making keep either A, kicking the can down the road, or B, being spectacular failures. And that's a frustrating place to be, I think, for fans. And then when you go through last year and it's all about patience, and Anthony Richardson needs reps, and he needs experience, and he's got to play. And you bench him in the middle of last year. And then you bring in Joe Flacco, the backup, and you try to sell it as, well, Joe Flacco's a win-now quarterback, and we're going to win now. And then in the next two games, Minnesota and Buffalo, the offense is a total dumpster fire. And they score one non-garbage time touchdown. Flacco throws 3 picks against Buffalo, and then you immediately reverse course. I can understand why fans look at that. They're like, come on, guys. Like, what's the deal here? Why should I believe anything that you say about anything? You say Joe Flacco's your win-now guy, and 2 weeks later, you're reversing course after 2 games? You say Anthony Richardson needs reps. He's 22 years old, and then halfway through the season, you're benching him? So I understand why people are skeptical about that. So when they say that we're going to have an open quarterback competition this year, you know, Joe Colts fan in Avon is sitting on his couch being like, yeah, okay. And also those of you that think, and this isn't even an opinion thing, this is fact. This regime, Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, have a lot invested in Anthony Richardson. They have far more invested in Anthony Richardson being on the field and succeeding than they do Daniel Jones. There's no question about that. No one is disputing that. But at the end of the day, what the Colts brain trust needs to do is win. They got to save their butts is really what they got to do, to be more frank. This is about butt-saving time. Sorry, I probably should have phrased that differently, but you get what I mean. You know, Chris Ballard is in what, year 19? I've lost track. Is it been that long? Maybe it's been a little bit shorter than that. Chris Ballard's been here for like 30 years without really doing anything. They've won a playoff game. They haven't been to the playoffs since that 2020 season with Phillip Rivers that I talked about. They haven't won the division even once. I think they've had, they've had 2 double-digit winning seasons? 10 wins with Luck in 18, and then 11 with Rivers in 20. But he knows that this is not going to last forever, even though it feels like it's lasted forever. They have to do something this year. You know, if you have Richardson and he's your guy and you sync with him, let's say that he continues to show what he's shown so far, and you go 5-12, then everybody's gone. Steichen's gone, Ballard's gone, Richardson's gone. Everybody. But as we talked about with Chap, I think there is that scenario where Daniel Jones wins a job, and nobody wants to see that happen. If you gave Ballard and Steichen true serum, they don't even want to see that happen. But you win 10 games, and you go to the playoffs, and that's probably good enough to save Steichen's job and Ballard's job, but not enough for Richardson. And that's what it's about at this point. It's not about waiting around. They can't afford to wait around anymore. They got to go. And that's why I think this is a genuine quarterback battle. I believe that it is a 50-50 thing. Maybe I'm naive to think that. That's where I am. Because if Richardson doesn't show it here in camp and is even worse than just if he's straight bad, he's going to lose the job. Now, if it's a situation where Richardson's okay and he flashes a little bit, kind of like what he's been so far in the here's a flash. Oh, wow, look at that throw. Wow, that's amazing. And, you start drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to that. And Jones is just Jones because, let's face it, he's just a very underwhelming player. And if you guys haven't watched a lot of Daniel Jones, you'll watch him in Westfield, and he's just, God love him, he's a very underwhelming player. Great leader, great teammate, seems like a great dude. But you watch the guy play quarterback, and you're just like, okay. When he's not running, he ain't doing anything else, for the most part. But he brings some things to the table, like I mentioned with the leadership and all of that, and he is a relentless worker. And that was the knock on Richardson. I mentioned the fact that he got benched in the middle of the season. A lot of the reason given for that was that he wasn't preparing the way that he should. And that's not even to say that he was being lazy or whatever else. It's just not understanding the gravity of the situation. And that is something that Jones from day one has always understood. And that's what endeared him to his teammates in New York, even as things did not go really as anybody wanted, outside of that 2022 season, which I think looking back was smoke and mirrors more than anything else. You still had Saquon then. I mean, the Giants were winning every game on like the last play of the game, and there were a lot of like unrepeatable, flukish type things that led to their success that season, and also led to a $160 million payday it was for Daniel Jones. So he was able to cash in on all of that, and good for him. But I do think as we get into OTAs and all this stuff, this is just a legitimate battle and a huge, huge offseason. Nothing is guaranteed here. And it sounds cliche and all of that. I get it. I'm serious. That's where I am. I believe that's where the Colts are too. And it's a terrible place to be, to open it up to a straight 50-50 quarterback battle when your number 4 overall pick is entering year 3. That says a lot about the situation. But that's where they are with this. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Daniel Jones is the week 1 starter. Would not be at all. And most of that is the fact that I'm zapped on I'm a former Anthony, kind of like I'm a former smoker. I'm a former Anthony Richardson Kool-Aid drinker. I was on board. I was on board for the traits. Traitsy, let's do it. Dude throws bombs. Oh my God, look at him dunk a basketball. Holy crap. I was there. I was singing the praises. I was ready to go. And the first year, I think 4-game sample, very small, I think was pretty good. I think he flashed in those games. At Houston, he looked like he was the best player on the field before he slowed it up on that touchdown run and got a concussion. The end of that Jaguars game or the Rams game where they came back, there were a lot of nice moments. Again, with the caveat being sample size for Richardson in year 1. And we just didn't have that last year. People want to point to the Jets game or the Patriots game. My God. The Jets and the Patriots stunk last year. That was a bad football team. It's a really bad team. And they had to complete, 3 4th downs in that drive? Great, okay. But people were wanting to throw a parade. Oh, my God. Richardson, he rose to the moment. And maybe I wanted to be there too. I wanted to take the positives as they came because there was so much negative. But you're handing me that as reasons to believe barely surviving a terrible Patriots team and a terrible Jets team when the offense was nothing in outside of the first drive and the last drive of those games. That's tough for me to do. So maybe he hits, and I will never be so happy to say to take the loss or whatever else, to be like, okay, look, I was a former Richardson believer, and then I became a doubter, and now I'm a believer again. Wonderful. I just want the Colts to get out of this. I just want them to shift this thing out of neutral. I am so tired of the same season happening over and over and over again. It is the worst place to be. The absolute worst place to be is 8-9, 9-8 football. Because you get teased. You get teased into believing that things are going to be changed this time around, and it's Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football. That's what it is. And that's what the Colts have been for the last 5-6 seasons. You know, outside of 2022, every single one of those years would have given you hope at some point that, oh my God, this might be different. I mean, I remember the Jacoby Brissett start, and people were talking about it's hilarious to look back on now, but people are like, oh, I think he might be in the MVP conference. Okay. That carriage turned into a pumpkin pretty quick. And then with Wentz and the December home win over New England, and you're like, oh my God, it's happening. They're going to break through. And then you have the Raiders game, and then the debacle in Jacksonville. 2022 never got off the ground. 23 was a fun season. You had Richardson, you lost him early, and then Minshew, and that was okay. I mean, that was kind of the rose amongst the thorns, but we're talking about a 9-8 season where you lost a home game to Houston with the division on the line being one of the best seasons of the last 6 years. That shows you where the Colts have been. Really, over the last 10 years, because you go back to the late Pagano years, it was the same thing. Just a lot of really mediocre football. And I think they want to get out of that. And, 10-7 at the end of the day is still average, but 10-7, even if it comes with Daniel Jones, and even if you're facing the same exact thing next year where you have no idea who your quarterback is because Jones is in a contract year and you've given up on Richardson, that still means that Ballard and Sy can have their jobs, and I think that's the focus at this point. 239-1070, we come back. We will re-rack the big headlines of the day, including a breakthrough for Rory McIlroy. And top of the hour, we'll talk a little bit Notre Dame football. It's Query and Company here on The Fan. God, this is a great song. Besides Dazed and Confused, this song actually reminds me of a college course I took at IU, the history of rock and roll. It was taught by a guy named Andy Hollidan, and it was my favorite class in 4 years there. And we had a whole unit on glam rock. And it was like, obviously a lot of it was focused on David Bowie, but part of our exam was identifying glam rock bands, and one of them was Sweet. I do not have the depth of musical knowledge that JMV has, but that class with Andy was awesome. It was in Ballantine Hall. It was like 300 people, and it was one of those classes where even people that didn't take the course would just show up and just take one of the seats in the back because that's how fun it was. And I don't remember a lot about college for multiple reasons, but that's one thing that I remember. Derek Schultz filling in for Jake Query. He is going to be back tomorrow. He's resting up after a long trip back, I guess I should say, to Long Beach for the IndyCar weekend where Kyle Kirkwood won. And I say this as an IndyCar appreciator and all of that. It is just very tough. It's tough this time of year for IndyCar outside of the true diehards to really get any traction at all, right? We just had an amazing Masters weekend. We have the NBA playoffs. We have the NFL draft coming. Hell, the WNBA draft is tonight. And it's like, oh, yeah, like Kyle Kirkwood won a race. So it's just hard to kind of get on the radar and break through the clutter. Speaking of the big headlines for today, the biggest one of all is Rory McIlroy's win, completing the long-awaited career Grand Slam by holding off Justin Rose in an epic Masters final round, which led to a playoff hole. And I said this at the intro of the show. I don't want to do a whole Masters segment because I'm not a golf guy. I'm a golf fair weather type guy. I watch the majors. I don't golf. I sucked at it forever, and then once my dad wasn't able to play with me anymore because he tore his meniscus, I just kind of stopped. And I heard it's something that Jake has recently gotten into. Like, Jake goes all the time with his buddy, Dr. Eugene White, the old North Central principal, and they go hack away. And he's become a pretty good golfer, has Jake, over the last, year and a half or so. So I didn't want to spend time on the radio going in depth about the Masters. But I did want to at least acknowledge it. I think even if you are a very casual golf fan like I am, you can understand the gravity of that win for Rory McIlroy, who is one of the real names of golf, right? I mean, if you stop somebody out on the circle right now and you're like, name 5 professional golfers right now, I think a large majority of them would name Rory. It was a great win and a great moment, an epic finish, and he almost choked it away a couple of times, and then he didn't. I mean, it was really fantastic. Can we fit in John here just real quick before we get to Mike Lee? Let's do that. We were just talking about the Colts quarterback situation, and I wanted to get to John's phone call. Thanks so much for dialing us up, man. How are you?
Doing well. I wanted to talk about Anthony Richardson. I would not offer him – I'd be hesitant to offer him the big contract after this year solely based on his health history. I mean, forget the inaccuracy, forget the tapping out, forget all the other inadequacies on the field. Just on his health history and his inability to play enough games per year, I couldn't justify paying him big money. If he plays half the year, that's backup money to me. And I would not offer him the big contract based on the health history. Thank you.
Thanks, John. You know what? I would put that away in the good problem to have category. If we get to a point where we're even having a conversation about Anthony Richardson's second contract, we're in a really good place. Colts are in a really good place. So let's hope that conversation even becomes a viable thing after this year, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I mean, right now it's just about, can Anthony Richardson survive this offseason? Can he even win the starting job? So then we can have a conversation about him starting all year and then talk about the contract. So that's a little cart in front of the horse. But, I mean, I agree with your general take that the injury stuff is always going to follow him around until he proves that he can stay healthy. We come back on the show. We're actually going to talk some Notre Dame football. Mike Berardino of South Bend Tribune will join us. We'll recap their spring game and talk about what Marcus Freeman does for an encore in year number 4. It's Query and Company here on The Fan. Don't go anywhere. We actually took this straight off of Kevin Bowen's phone. This is his morning alarm to wake up for the morning show every morning, to be here just in time for the 6 o'clock start. Notre Dame had their traditional spring game. So as much as things have changed in major college sports, certainly over the last couple of months, but it feels like, God, every week something is new and different. There was a little bit of old up in South Bend. And joining us now to not only recap that, but talk about what Marcus Freeman and his staff could possibly do for an encore after a tremendous year 3, entering now year number 4 up there in South Bend, is Mike Berendino. He covers the Irish for the South Bend Tribune, and he joins us now on the guest line. And Mike, thanks so much for joining me. And as I mentioned, Notre Dame a little bit of an outlier this year, I guess, when it comes to spring games. Some teams just not even doing them at all, or they're doing some kind of like we saw Purdue do a showcase type format where it's somewhat of an open scrimmage, or they're doing drills and things like that. My question is, though, and I don't know if they've alluded to this or not, is that the last time we see the blue and gold game, or do you believe they're going to try to at least keep that format going while other programs seem to be transitioning away from doing a game at all?
That's a fair question. I will say that this one was tweaked to include some 7-on-7, so they weren't calling it a showcase, and it was on Peacock. If people had Peacock and what NBC pays them per year for the main course, of course, they wanted to have the appetizer too. So all that was available, but 7-on-7 those were run by the 4th-string quarterback Blake Hebert, no relation to Bobby Hebert, but he got his snaps. But the other 3 were the ones we were watching the most, and to read tea leaves, and I'd say C.J. Carr, Lloyd Carr's grandson, came out looking the best in this format.
Would you say that C.J. Carr also has a leg up in that 3-headed quarterback battle?
I think it's hard to say that because we saw so little of the other practices. In fact, they're continuing 3 more practices this week, kind of a weird format in that the spring game does not conclude spring practice for Notre Dame. It was session 12 out of 15. So we were only allowed in media to very brief portions of the other 11 practices so far. We're not invited to these final 3. So, there's every single rep will be judged. CJ did throw an interception. Marcus Freeman mentioned that. That was the only turnover of this exercise. But he made a couple of throws that down the sideline, tight ends, deep outs, basically, to 2nd and 3rd string tight ends, that the ball was just right on the money in ways that Kenny Minchey and Steve Angeli were unable to do on Saturday, but we've seen Angeli do it at times in actual games and actually win a bowl game in the Sun Bowl. So this, and Marcus also mentioned he'd kind of like to ideally have this whittled down to 2 guys by fall camp. How they get there, what that might mean portal-wise, to be determined.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on that because you mentioned talking about fall camp. The spring portal window is about to open here, and I don't know what the staff is going to tell these guys, but is there a possibility the quarterback that is 3rd in this race, especially if it's Kenny Minchey, but maybe even Steve Angeli? Angeli at this point probably feels like, guys, if you're not going to give me the job now, or I can't win it now, then when am I ever going to win it? Is it a possibility that one of those 2 leave in the spring portal if they don't like where they stack up, if they're given some of that guidance by this staff here in a week or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's how much truth telling will be done in these sessions. I mean, this is a staff, starting with Marcus Freeman, that prides itself on straight shooting. That's how they establish these relationships that they speak of, that allows them to avoid a lot of portal departure because people don't feel like they were misled. So, and he mentioned after Saturday's event that conversations would be had that would determine what's best for the program, what's best for individuals, continuing this idea that they wouldn't just hold people in limbo if they kind of already made up their minds. Again, we don't know what Minchey and Angeli have done behind closed doors in the spring, and we do know that Kenny Minchey, of the 3, is the one with perhaps the least recruiting service juice coming in here. He was a Pittsburgh commit who flipped. He's a guy from Tennessee, by the way, and we know some things have gone on in Tennessee here lately. But he's also the guy who fits the dual threat mode of a Mike Denbrock offense that goes back to Desmond Ritter, that goes back to Jalen Daniels, goes back here with Riley Leonard. So it'd be the most seamless handoff of the keys to the offense in that regard. If you want to have that QB run element, if it were Minchie, because Angeli's not going to beat you with his legs, and CJ Carr at this point, although mobile, seems to be more of a pure pocket guy.
Breaking news from Mike Berendino right here on the Fan that Kenny Minchie holding out for $4 million. Is that right?
No, nothing like that. But
of course,
just geography dots.
That's right.
I do think that it's possible this is one of those years where if all three guys are like that, no, we like it here. We're on track. I would say Angeli, because he was an early OE back in 22. Should be able to get his degree wrapped up this spring.
Sure.
The program's back east. He's from New Jersey, so to play geography here. But Rutgers, I believe, is fine right now. Quarterback Syracuse should be fine right now. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speculate on that. I just did. But as far as it's generally you end up in the portal when there's hurt feelings or you feel misled, or the tampering is such elsewhere that they make you an offer too good to ignore. I don't know that any of the guys we mentioned there, besides CJ Carr, would merit that kind of allure.
Mike Berendino covers Notre Dame football for the South Bend Tribune. He joins us right now on the guest line on Query & Company here on the Fan. We all know what an incredible job Al Golden did with that Irish defense the last few years, and now it's Chris Ashley. You just mentioned Rutgers, and that was, of course, in his history. That's what probably Big Ten fans will remember him by out here in the Midwest. What are your early impressions of Chris Ash and filling in what are going to be substantially large shoes there running the Notre Dame defense?
Well, he's all business. He came in here having been in the NFL as an assistant, as a scout the last 4 years. Hasn't run a college defense since Texas in the COVID year of 20, and it just went so-so, and Tom Herman did not survive that season, and he was swept out with the staff, Ash was. But, goes back to Ohio State with a national championship defense, co-coordinating with Luke Fickell way back in 14. And the one thing I could say is put his stamp on two things. Is that they are trying to incorporate a little more zone defense. I wrote about that in the South Bend Tribune, that a team that prided itself on just manning up and getting right in your grill, and it worked pretty well all the way until Jeremiah Smith on 3rd and 11 against Ohio State. And, of course, 31 unanswered points in the midst of that national title game. So there were times where they got picked apart, no doubt. But overall, they got away with it with corners like Christian Gray and Edward Moore, and before he got hurt, Ben Morrison. But they do want to have, and Marcus Freeman's talked about it, he endorses this concept that they'll try to mix and match a little bit more. And it's probably wise without Xavier Watts in the back anymore to protect you from breakdowns. They are going to have a brand new starter in there at safety alongside a Don Schuler, who is excellent in his back. But there's that, and then just basically wonky stuff like having a little bit wider splits and letting those Vipers and defensive ends like Bryce Young, Bryant Young's son, who's ready to roll, it looks like, just take a little bit wider approach, maybe not to worry so much about rush lanes, but maybe thinking more about getting to the quarterback a little bit more. They weren't necessarily able to do that as much last year. A lot of injuries at the Viper spot last year. They're hoping to get Boubacar Traore and Jordan Botello back by the fall.
What unit, Mike, if you had to pick one, causes you the most concern, offense or defense, wrapping up spring camp here?
They're not terribly deep at tight end with the guy. They'll bring in a couple more guys this in June, with June enrollees, but not the traditional, because Cooper Flanagan's going to be out maybe the whole season, had shown a lot of promise underclassmen. So Eli Reardon leading that group and Kevin Bauman, those two between them have 4 career ACLs, and you just hope they don't have to deal with that again. But a little bit thin, surprisingly, at tight end. And a wide receiver, will they have people who can get separation? We didn't see Malachi Fields, the transfer from Virginia. He'll get here in June. They're really depending on him, but that's been an annual spot where getting people to be downfield weapons, to be reliable, to just be third down weapons. That's a big reason why Riley Leonard was relied upon so much to do it with his legs, especially third down and in the red zone. So I'd say those two spots, skill position spots, they make up for that with as deep a room at running back as there is in the country, led by Jeremiah Love, who spent the Saturday of the spring game signing autographs because he had tweaked his hamstring the week before. Nothing serious, but they will get a lot of mileage out of him, and we've seen him work at the wide receivers. He'll be split out at times, I would expect, come the fall, just anything to get the ball in his hands, get him out in space.
Yeah, you hope, Jaden Greathouse had a huge game against Penn State in that semifinal, and you hope that, maybe at wide receiver they can find something there. But, Mike, it's been a minute. I mean, that seemed to be not a problem for Notre Dame for a long time, but what do you have to even go back? Like, maybe like the Miles Boykin, Chase Claypool, and then Will Fuller would have been before that, but they had a run of really good receivers come through, and it just feels like the last couple of years it's either been guys that have just washed out quickly or guys that came in with some promise who just didn't quite deliver.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where a Jordan Faison, who came in here to be a lacrosse player, Faison is the top slot guy, and they even let him go out wide sometimes. So. And he doesn't have the frame or the profile necessarily to do it, but he does have the ability to get open. So recruit breakdowns, it's a reason. They've had 3 different wide receiver coach situations just in the time that I've been around here since 2018. And Mike Brown is the guy now, formerly known at Cincinnati and at Wisconsin. It's to the point where he had to reach it back to a guy that he's now coached at 3 different spots. And that's Will Pauling, who had been injured a few different times last year at Wisconsin. 2 years ago, had an excellent year at Wisconsin. But he's on his 3rd program, and all of them were with Mike Brown as his position coach. So Pauling's a guy who had stress fracture surgery in January and has been able to participate in some things, non-contact things mostly. Played a little bit in the spring game, but he'll be a key guy in the slot. Jaden Greathouse, no doubt, has a lot of upside. But Micah Gilbert was a guy they'd kind of hoped to see more of this spring. He broke his hand very first drill of the first practice of the spring, so that was a setback. But plenty of time for him to catch up. Cam Williams is a speedster from Chicago who was well regarded, signed a year ago, and really hasn't shown much and didn't show much in anything we've seen so far this spring. But doesn't mean that the light doesn't go on at some point. But no matter who it is, you're talking about a quarterback of those aforementioned who's going to want to find a comfort zone with people and a go-to guy and all that still to be hashed out for the most part.
Mike Berardino covers Notre Dame football for the South Bend Tribune. Last thing here, Mike, we mentioned the encore of Marcus Freeman here in year 4 after, outside of a rough second weekend in September, really was a fantastic season for Notre Dame and getting to the national championship game before ultimately falling short. This schedule feels far less conducive to a playoff run than last year on paper, where, last year it was like once they won in College Station, you were thinking, oh, okay, like this is better than a 50-50 shot that this is going to happen. You start at Miami, you have the return game against A&M, you go at Arkansas, which I know that program has been trying to find its way. That's a very difficult place to play. And then fellow playoff team Boise just kind of sneakily in there the first week of October. That's just in the first 5 weeks. Schedule lines up after that because the ACC always kind of stinks, and they've got a bunch of 6-6 teams that Notre Dame dunks on routinely. But, man, that's a really tough slog for the Irish this year, just looking at it right now in April.
No, it's definitely going to be a step up, and you're right, the home schedule far better than what they put out there last year, I think. Again, let's see what the spring portal brings for any of those programs as well. You end the regular season with a Stanford in disarray. Frank Reich pinch hitting there, and Andrew Luck. That's a whole other story for you guys. USC and coming here, that's a grudge match all of a sudden with Chad Bowden out there as a general manager and picking off talent here and there and saying crazy things like the Lincoln Riley's the first coach he's ever worked around who actually evaluates recruits, and everybody kind of thought that Marcus Freeman did that pretty well too and was all in lead recruiter. But some subtext there, but overall you got to get the quarterback situation worked out first. You don't want to have week to week uncertainty, and that really could take all the way up to the Miami game week, maybe, or the week before. At best, they've got a lot more reps to grade and break down, and they got to get through the transfer portal first to see if they've got 3 options there or just 2.
Yeah, they're hoping it goes better than their last trip to Miami. That was a bloodbath there in that 2017 season when they went there for that primetime game. At Mike Berendino on X, ndinsider.com for the latest and greatest when it comes to the Irish. Mike, really appreciate you hopping on with us. Thanks so much.
All right, anytime. Thanks.
It's our friend Mike Berendino up there in South Bend. I love South Bend. Parents born and raised in South Bend. Parents were Adams grads. My sister went to St. Mary's. A lot of family still up in that area. My uncle's still up there. We have cousins in the Bourbon area, Plymouth, and then all the way up into Niles, Michigan. And people knock on South Bend, and I've always, like, when I was a kid, we would take vacations. My grandparents were still living, and we'd come out, and I thought South Bend was awesome. I remember, like, rollerblade. This was the 90s, right? I remember rollerblading on the East Race, being like, whoa, like the East Race, cool. We go to the farmer's market and Bonnie Dunes. It was like this drive-in ice cream place. Like South Bend always has a special. I get defensive about South Bend when people knock South Bend. I know it's not the most luxurious place in the world, but it meant a lot to me as a kid because of my familial ties there. And I got to go. I was lucky enough. A really good buddy of mine, Mike, who our kids go to school together at St. Thomas Aquinas at 46 in Illinois, and he's a Notre Dame grad, and he and his brother actually both hit on the playoff lottery, and so I was able to go with him and a bunch of his family members and went up to the Notre Dame-Indiana playoff game, which was freezing. It was 15 degrees or whatever it was, but what an incredible atmosphere that was. Really, really, really cool. And I think if Indiana fans, Notre Dame fans, it was a little bit weird because of there is clearly some cross pollination when it comes to the whole reversible jacket thing, and well, I'm a Notre Dame football fan, I'm an IU basketball fan, like that whole deal. But that was a tremendous game and a tremendous run for Notre Dame. They came back and beat Georgia and beat them pretty good. I understand their quarterback wasn't healthy, but still. That was a game where they held Georgia to 10 points, and then they beat Penn State, and that was a thriller, and it went back and forth. Just a really great slugfest, a coin flip type game. And then I think, I guess, with the rally against Ohio State, maybe you felt a little bit better about that title game, even though it was a very one-sided title game against Ohio State. But just to get there and get on that stage again, it's a lot better than where Notre Dame had been, and certainly where they were in week 2, having that embarrassing loss to Northern Illinois. So we'll see what they do for an encore. I'm intrigued by all 3 of the major Power 4 college football teams going into this year. I think have a lot of reasons for optimism. Certainly Indiana because of just a dream season last year, but everything to me says that, is Indiana going to go 11-1 and make the playoff? No, I don't think that's going to happen, but is Indiana becoming an 8 to 9 win program or on that level sustainable? Yeah, I think so. I don't see any reason why it's not. With their NIL war chest and Curt Cignetti's track record, I don't see why that can't be a consistent winner. And Purdue with Barry Odom, he's a guy that at least he gets it, and he has kind of been there, done that, and program building and all of that stuff. Purdue, anything that happens this year is just gravy, considering what last year was for them. I mean, nobody wants to relive that 2024 season again. So positives all around for me. Energy, optimism, the whole deal when it comes to college football. Even the college basketball teams, IU, a new coach. Matt Painter's just got things rolling up there in West Lafayette. Butler is kind of Butler I worry about. They can't seem to kind of get it right there, and it's a shame because Hinkle's like across the street from my house. I love Hinkle. I love going to games there. Got a lot of Butler friends, and I always pull for them to do well, but they've just had some trouble finding their way here. It doesn't help when you have to basically make a new team every single year, but that's what the world that everybody's living in with the portal and everything else, and quarterbacks holding out for $4 million. This is what it is. This is what everybody signed up for. So it's not changing. We're not going back. It's just something that you have to deal with. It's the new reality of major college sports, at least how it looks like right now. For good, bad, whatever else. I think there's actually a lot of good that comes with it, even though we stick to a lot of the negatives, but there are certainly some negatives that are associated there. If you're just joining us here on the show, hi. Hope you're having a fabulous Monday, and thanks so much for being here on Query and Company. I'm Derek Schultz filling in for Jake as he's coming back from Long Beach. Tough trip for him, so he's resting up, and he'll be back at full strength tomorrow. We've spent some time on the Masters, an epic finish with Rory McIlroy, which we were discussing earlier in the show today. I want to get back into the Pacers coming up here in just a few minutes. I think the Pacers did something that is worth being acknowledged and appreciated, celebrated. I don't think I would go that far, but acknowledged and appreciated for sure in what they did in this regular season by coming back in double overtime yesterday and beating the Cavaliers in the finale. And then we talked plenty of Colts with Mike Chappell earlier today. The dean talked about the quarterback situation where I think there really is going to – he and I both are on the same page there. We think it's going to be a legit quarterback that's not just lip service from the Colts, that it's not just to light a fire for Anthony Richardson and he's the de facto starter, and then this is going to be a real quarterback battle, and for the first time in a long time. Because I had called Mike and said, hey, like, when's the last time that this was really open? Because, you know, I came here in the early 2000s, and I really didn't start following the Colts until, 03, 04, like right when that Peyton Manning group was really breaking through. So I don't have a lot of, like, history to lean on where – was Paul Justin in a quarterback? But, like, I don't know. I wasn't here for that. And he had mentioned that it goes back even before Jeff George. So you're talking 35 years, talking almost 40 years. So you're talking like the infancy of the Indianapolis Colts after they moved here in the Mayflower vans where they had a real quarterback battle, because 2 years ago doesn't count. They might have said that Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson, you don't draft somebody number 4 if he's not going to just start. And that's the position that the Colts were in with that. So I think it's going to be a legit competition. We talked about that. We'll put that up on the podcast page later on, 1075thefan.com, in case you missed it. As with all of our segments right here on our fill-in day here for Jake Query. We come back on the show, as I mentioned, Pacers did something in the regular season. I get that it's the regular season. We don't celebrate the regular season, right? But something that we need to acknowledge and appreciate. And I'll tell you what that is and why when we come back. Derek Schultz filling in for Jake Query on Query and Company here on The Fan. Stick around. rolling right along here on a warm Monday. As many of you know, the Fan here relocated studios. What was that, Corbin? Like a year ago? When was the last time you guys were on the 5th floor? Was that 2024 or was that 2023? Maybe I'm losing count.
I think it was 2023. I
Okay,
know
so-
I wasn't here.
Okay, so maybe it was more than a year ago, but when the studio was up on the 5th floor, it was on the circle side of the building. So you look outside the window and you see the money. It was actually a really awesome view. I kind of miss that. Even I fill in like twice a year and I'm talking about the view, but the 2 times a year that I filled in, I always like the view. So I can't see outside right now. I don't know. We are just walled in here. Not that I don't like looking at Corbin, but it was overcast, but still a nice warm spring day coming off the Masters weekend. I just had a fabulous weekend as well, just family-wise. My son played Little League Baseball on the opening day, and I'm coaching the team, and it was great. Good vibes all around, not just for sports, but just for life. And good vibes for the Indiana Pacers as well as they enter the postseason with home court advantage. First time in a long time for them when it comes to that. They'll be wearing home jerseys in a game 1, which we found out is going to tip Saturday at 1 o'clock against their old pals, the Milwaukee Bucks, fellow Central Division dwellers. And one thing that they did yesterday in a game that didn't matter, and I say that because both teams treated it like it didn't matter with who they were putting out on the floor. Cleveland didn't play really any of their regulars. Pacers barely played some of theirs. We're talking like 10, 11, 12 minutes. Johnny Furphy played 40. Quentin Jackson played 40. And no offense to those guys, but in a normal situation, you wouldn't be playing those guys 40 minutes. But the Pacers came back from 23 down in the fourth quarter to tie the game, force overtime. They end up winning in double overtime. It was a furious comeback. It was great to see those guys come through in a winning way. And they ended up, at the end of the day, getting to 50 wins. 50 and 32. Now, I fully understand that the NBA is not like the NFL. Like, you ask me any Colts season of the last 30 years, I could tell you what their regular season win-loss total was. I would guess with like 95% accuracy. Whereas in the NBA, it's not really something that we remember. Like, you remember the Colts, oh yeah, they went 14-2, or they went, 10-6. Or, God, man, that was a rough season. They went, 2-14. I remember the 2011 season. They won 2 games, which was a freaking miracle that they won 2 games. In the NBA, we don't really do that. Pacers' all-time franchise record is 61 wins in 2004. I don't think people remember that it was 61. I don't think that that's some number that people mention. But to get to the 50-win mark, Pacers hadn't done that since 2014. It is the second time in 20 years. 20 years, think about that. I mean, that goes back to the brawl here. 20 years that the Pacers have won 50 games. And we live in a world now where what you do in the regular season largely doesn't matter. We see it with team legacies. We see it especially with player legacies. I saw something the other day. It was one of those player podcasts. I'm not sure if it was the Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes pod, or I think Gilbert Arenas does a pod. It might have been his. They had Rashad McCants on. You guys remember Rashad? Speaking of 20 years ago, you guys remember Rashad McCants? He's a great player on North Carolina's 05 team. The Sean May, Bloomington native, and Ray Felton, 2005 North Carolina team that beat that really good D. Brown, Luther Head, Darren Williams, Roger Powell, Illinois team. But that's like the last time that Rashad McCants has been relevant, right? I haven't thought about Rashad McCants until yesterday. I had not heard the name or thought about the name Rashad McCants in 20 years. And he got on one of those pods and he started talking about, well, Luka doesn't play championship basketball. Dude, what? Why? Because he hasn't won a ring? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Dallas was in the finals basically on his back not that long ago. On that dude's back. But, okay, well, he didn't win the ring, so he's not a winner. He's not a champion. I mean, give me a break. We need to sometimes stop ourselves with how we are consuming sports. and be better able to sort of appreciate the journey along the way. And I know that sounds cheeseball, and I know that sounds corny, but it's an 82-game regular season, guys. 82 games. It is 6 months long. So on January 15th, on a Wednesday night when it's 10 degrees, and you're sitting in your boxers, and you're watching Kristen Airy and Quinn Buckner and the Pacers play a game against, God, I don't know, the Wizards, you need that to matter, right? You need a payoff for that. And if we're just going to throw everything away and say that, well, it doesn't matter, who cares? Wake me up when the Pacers are in the playoffs. Then why are you in your boxers in mid-January watching the game and dedicating 3 hours of your life to it? Then who cares, right? Pacers winning 50 games. If they would have lost yesterday and they won 49 games, does that mean the regular season wasn't good and wasn't fun and wasn't successful? No, none of those things, right? It's an arbitrary number. I'll admit. It's arbitrary. 50 wins. Okay, great. But they hadn't done it in 20 years. And it just kind of hammers home the point that this is a good and fun basketball team. They have been worth your time for a large majority of that season. Maybe not the first 6 weeks of the season when it started 10-15. But after that, 40-17. They won games at a 70% clip. How many times in Pacers history, NBA history, have they won games at a 70% clip? That's hard to do. Only 3 teams were better than them over that 57-game span. So I just think as much as we are enamored with the postseason, and if the Pacers go out and they lose to Milwaukee, then this season suddenly becomes a disappointment. I understand what's coming. I know that. I know that I'm sticking my neck out here a little bit. Where, well, Schultz said on the air when he was filling in once a year for Jake that 50 wins was a great season. Gee golly whiz. Like, I understand how this makes me sound. But the larger point is that I'm one of those people that I still like to kind of take things as they come and not put all my eggs in the win the ring or you suck basket, because I just think that's a miserable way to be a sports fan. If that is how you consume sports, then everyone and everything largely is a failure. And the things even that we have celebrated in this town are a failure. If you're a win a ring or you suck guy, then Reggie Miller's career is about failure, right? He didn't win one. He only went to the finals once. But you stop most people, and I'm not just talking about in Indianapolis, you stop most people on the street. Jake likes to play this game. This is his show, so let's play that game. You stop 10 people in Denver, Colorado, and you say, hey, I guess they have to be NBA fans or sports fans. Give me 2 words to describe Reggie Miller. And I guarantee you that the 2 words that come up are clutch and winner for a guy that never won a championship. Because that's how we used to consume sports. We used to appreciate these things. We used to celebrate these things. And you used to be able to go to sleep at night and appreciate when your team had a decent season, had a good season, had a fun season. It was worth your time, even if it didn't result in a championship. And that's kind of where I am. And maybe this is just me getting old. I'm 42 now. So maybe this is just me. This is how I just approach life. My sports viewing experience now is this worth my time? Was this worth my time? Because if the answer is no, then I'm just not going to do it. I just don't consume sports to consume them now. I have too much other. I have an 8-year-old. I have a wife that works the graveyard shift at a major city hospital. Like, I have a lot. I have a day job. I took a half day today to do this show. I have a lot going on in my life. So things need to be worth it. There needs to be a payoff for that to happen. And to me, the payoff for investing this time in the Pacers, even if the playoffs don't go as we want, is that for 4.5 months, I was really entertained. I had fun. I enjoyed the Indiana Pacers this year. And that is not going to change if for the next week and a half they play bad basketball against Milwaukee or they get bounced by Cleveland. That's not going to change for me. Now, you might approach it differently, and the win at all costs people, win a ring or you suck people are going to approach that differently, but that's kind of where I am with sports. And I'm telling you guys, maybe you don't want to live here and maybe you think I'm delusional. It is a much, much better headspace to be in when you're a sports fan. Just enjoy the things as they come, accept things for as they are. Like if a team sucks or if they blow it or if they mismanage something, are we going to rip them on? Jake going to rip them on this show? Am I going to rip them in an IBJ column? Whatever. JMV going to go? Of course. That's why these things exist. That's why sports media exists. This isn't to create some sort of like a Pollyanna type. Everything is sugar plum fairies and candy canes and gumdrop houses and all of that. That's not how sports is. But you can't be like the win at all costs guy, because if you are that guy with how you consume sports, then everything sucks and everything fails. I have a buddy back east who, we grew up big Yankees fans, and we still are. We've got a Yankee text thread. And to him, he's also a UConn fan, so maybe he's a little bit jaded because he's used to his teams winning championships all the time. But everything with the Yankees is just doom and gloom all the time. And if you don't win, you suck. If you don't win at all, you suck. Like, I had a great year watching the Yankees last year. It was a lot of fun. The Juan Soto homer in Cleveland, that was awesome. They had a great regular season as well, beat up on the Royals, and those teams were less than them. They beat up on a couple of AL Central teams that were overmatched, I'll admit. But that was fun. They won the pennant. Remember when that was a thing? You win the pennant? That used to be a big deal. And yeah, they got embarrassed a little bit against the Dodgers, and they kicked the ball around the infield in that Game 5. And it was kind of a gentleman's sweep type series. But still, that was a fun year. It was worth my time. I'm not going to rip. The Yankees lost in the wild card round. I would have ripped them. They didn't. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I'm old. If I was 15 years old, I would have said, oh, this is terrible and everything sucks because they didn't win the championship. But now it's just important to appreciate these things as they come, because just going to the World Series is hard. Making the Final Four is hard. Hell, for the Colts, winning the division is hard. I would I'll go out on Monument Circle if they won the division this year, and I'll go with my shirt off and sound the trumpets. Great, wonderful, grand. Nobody wants to see that. But I'll do it. And even if they flame out in the playoffs, that's a lot better than the last 10 years. We spent time in this city talking about, well, Peyton Manning only won one Super Bowl. Pfft. You guys know how stupid you sound now? Those of you that said that? You wouldn't take that? You wouldn't take 2003 right now? You wouldn't take 09 right now? You wouldn't take 08 right now? 07 right now? 05 right now? You would take all of that happily. The last 10 years of the Colts has been a miserable existence compared to that. So we'll see what the Pacers do. The bar for me for them is win a first-round series. If they beat the Bucks and they're competitive, fine. I'm fine with that. Overall the season, 50-32, I think that's a step forward with this core. And you won a playoff series. I think that's pretty good, all things considered. I know I'm settling a little bit. I would love to see them get back to the conference finals. I would. But I think that was circumstances-driven last year more than it was just skill-driven. They benefited from some things that were outside of their control, that's life. That's sports. I'm not knocking them for it. But I think overall this season was fun and good and successful, and 50 wins matters to me. And it should matter to you too. We come back on the show, we will start the wrap. I know JMV is going to come and visit. We've got some bullets to hit on and some things to touch on before we bid you adieu for the drive. It is Query and Company here on The Fan. Back to wrap it up next. Love it. All Dazed and Confused all day here on Query and Company. I'm Derek Schultz filling in. Jake is tired, as he should be. Long weekend in Long Beach. Took the red eye out and is, I'm assuming, still sleeping. Jake is 53, 52, somewhere early 50s. He has the sleep habits of me when I was 19. Largely nocturnal at night, sleeps a lot during the day, but I'll give him a break because it's a grind out there, IndyCar, and you know those guys on the IndyCar radio network, they got to do quals, they got to do all that stuff, and it maybe doesn't seem like it's exhausting because you're just quote unquote talking into the microphone, but and not that I can tell you because I've never been a race broadcaster before, but I've done like live play-by-play or live shows where it's 4 or 5, 6, 7, however long it is, and there is something mentally exhausting about that because you have to be mentally sharp during the entire time. It's a lot like when you're taking a road trip and you drive like a 12-hour drive. I used to drive out from my house, my front door in Connecticut to Bloomington, Indiana was about a 12-and-a-half-hour drive. And you just drive and drive and drive and drive. And then you're just exhausted at the end of it. And you're like, well, God, I was just sitting. It's not like I was doing anything, right? But, you're watching what's going on and you're having to pay attention the entire time. Times like 500. And that's what those, no pun intended with the 500. That's what those guys at the IndyCar Radio Network have to do in identifying those cars and talking about the action. I mean, I don't know. It is rare that I willingly compliment Jake, but I don't know how he and Nick Yeoman and Michael Young and Mark Janes and that whole crew. I don't know how they do it. It is, and they make every lap sound like it is the most important lap in the race and the most important lap of anybody's life. And I don't mean that like in a over the top like kitschy type way, like just because they're good at what they do. Really, really good at what they do, and I can't wait for May. I just actually got a text message about IndyCar IMS credentials, and we already ended up putting in for ours, and it doesn't actually hit me until I'm out there, but it's weird to think like a month from now we'll be out there at the garages and practices and Fast Friday and Carb Day and everything that goes into it. It's just it's wonderful. This is a wonderful time of year where you exit, the Final Four, which is a great event, the Masters, which is an amazing event, the NFL Draft, which has gotten extremely overblown. But still, I love the NFL Draft, into the race and NBA playoffs, and hopefully we'll have Racers and Pacers this year. Even if we don't, we've got a Saturday afternoon NBA playoff game for the Pacers. That's pretty freaking cool and nostalgic and fun. October is still probably like my favorite time because that, without football, that's the glaring omission here. But this is easily my second favorite time on the sports calendar. This kind of transition into April, into May, into spring. You're in a good mood. You're not scraping your windshield when you wake up in the morning. There are just a lot of positive and happy things going on. Couple of things to touch on here as we wrap up for the day. And I know JMV is going to come in a couple of minutes. We still got one more timeout to get to. Just sort of like a news and notes type thing. WNBA draft is tonight. Fever do not have their first-round pick. I believe that was the Sophie Cunningham deal, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, it was. See, I need Corbin here to back me up on all this stuff. He's like texting my phone with all of these factoids. I'm missing all these things. Apparently, we were on the 6th floor last year. We weren't on the 5th floor. He gave me Rodrigo Blankenship's kicker history. Really appreciate Corbin today for doing such a great job. Fever won't pick until 19th overall, barring a trade. And just like last year when everybody knew it was Caitlin Clark at number 1, it's going to be Paige Beckers at number 1. Going to Dallas. The rest of the board seems to be fairly wide open after that, but I'm glad. I'm just super happy for the WNBA to get its flowers. And, a lot of people are talking about, well, this is their moment. I don't think this is the WNBA's moment. I think this is their reality now. This isn't going to change, guys. Like, if you think that the WNBA is going to burn hot here for like 18 months and then everybody's going to forget about it and move on, that's not going to happen. This is the new reality. This is where we are with women's basketball. People are invested. They're going to watch, they're going to care, and they're going to want you to watch and care and talk about it. And it's going to be a topic on this show and other shows, and in the media, and it's getting coverage like crazy. People are into it. This isn't some flash in the pan thing. I think people thought that. I didn't think. I didn't know it was going to get like this, but I knew that the Caitlin Clark thing was going to end up being a big deal, and here we are. It's still very much a big deal. Also, a big deal is the next host of this show because he still does this at a full-time basis and didn't get fired like me, and he's going to join us when we come back. It's Query and Schultz. I'm sorry, Query and Schultz. Query and Company. Derek Schultz filling in for Jay Query. Sorry, old habits here on the Fan.
Nope.
Oh, keep going. Oh, sorry. I thought you were giving me the wrap-up like I had to go. Sorry. Corbin's telling me to keep going. We're producing while we're on the air. Hi, James. How are you? A couple of other news and notes to touch on as well. Sorry, this is why I'm filling in for the first time here. I know.
What? I didn't cuss. Don't hit that. I didn't cuss. I was going to stop it. Yeah.
We were having a good show, John, until everything just started. All our pets' heads are falling off.
Warm seat here.
All our pets' heads are falling. Is this where you sit?
Yeah.
I could have sat on the other side. Now I'm getting the wrap-up side.
Corbin,
Okay.
Hey, by the way, I normally stop at F because when you hit the dump button, it sounds like it's edgy. So, thank you.
Perfect. We'll come back with
Good to
Jay
see
and
you,
Vic.
buddy.
We come back.